Hello everyone. I am the storyteller. Tonight, I'll tell you about a place that doesn't sleep. A place where footsteps echo long after the halls are empty, where the curtains breathe though no hand stirs them. Most people know it as a landmark, a stage built for song and gospel. They buy their tickets, sit in the pews, and never wonder what keeps the shadows from spilling down over the spotlight. But I know. Because I work there. The Ryman Auditorium in Nashville is called the Mother Church of Country Music, but that's not the whole truth. Long before the Opry made it famous, long before tourists pressed their palms to its worn wood, the Ryman was chosen. Chosen as a doorway, chosen as a cage. And every night I walk its halls, I'm reminded why the rules are carved into paper older than me, older than the city itself. It isn't a job. It's a sentence. Relax, settle into the dark hum of silence between songs and hear what waits when the lights go out and the day itself comes hunting. And whatever you do, don't break the rules. After the flood washed out half the gear rental company I'd been working for, I found myself picking up shifts wherever I could. Clubs on Broadway, wedding setups, the kind of cash under the table gigs you don't put on a resume. Money wasn't steady, and I was behind on rent. That's why I answered the posting. Overnight maintenance / security, Ryman Auditorium, $30 per hour. No experience necessary. Contact Caldwell, facilities. It looked fake. Too much money, too little detail. But I sent my info anyway. No background check, no references. Caldwell called me the same night, voice low and businesslike. You'll be inside the building between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. No outside work. Just eyes on the property. Keep to the guidelines and you'll be fine. He didn't say, rules. He said, guidelines. I should have known something was wrong when he asked me to show up at the side door on 5th Avenue, not the main entrance. He told me not to bring food. Don't bring anything that spoils, he said. It's important. The Ryman looks different at night. The brick glows a kind of dull rust under the street lamps, and the stained glass windows don't shine the swallow light. When I got there, 5th Avenue was empty, no drunks wandering from Broadway, no traffic. Just me and the looming red walls of a place that's half church, half theater, and all ghost story. Caldwell was waiting at the side door. Tall man, white hair slicked back, dressed in coveralls too clean for real work. He handed me a laminated sheet before he even shook my hand. Guidelines, he said. Read them before you clock in. I stepped under the fluorescent buzz of the backstage hallway and read. Guidelines for overnight personnel, Ryman Auditorium. 1. Do not look directly at the stained glass windows after midnight. If you notice light through them, avert your eyes. 2. At 2:13 a.m., a door will open on its own. You must close it immediately. Do not look through it. 3. If you hear singing with no source, remain still until it stops. Do not hum along. Do not clap. 4. The stage must remain empty between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. If you see anyone there, call them by name. If they answer, it is safe. If they do not, leave them alone. 5. Never prop open an exterior door. Hemera notices breaches at the boundaries. I laughed a little when I read them. This is some kind of joke, right? Part of the Ryman's haunted tour deal. Caldwell didn't laugh. You want the job or not? I signed. The first half of the night was easy. I walked the balcony, checked the stage doors, listened to the creaks of an old building settling. But at 12:37, I caught myself looking at the stained glass above the stage. It wasn't light from outside, deep couldn't have been, not at that hour. The glass itself glowed faintly, golden white, like a sunrise bottled inside. The air went warm, like someone turned on stage lights behind me. My chest tightened. I forced myself to look away, eyes to the floor. The warmth faded. I'll warn you now, the guidelines aren't suggestions. They're the only thing between you and something ancient that doesn't care if you're a broke stagehand or a headliner. I didn't understand that fully until later, but that first night gave me enough proof. At 2:13 a.m., I heard the latch click. Backstage door, stage left. It swung open smooth, no draft, no human hand. Just opened. The air inside was brighter, like morning spilling out. I couldn't help it. I started to lean, just enough to glimpse what was past the threshold. And then I remembered Rule 2. I slammed the door shut. The handle was warm. When Caldwell came back at 7 o'clock, I asked him straight out. What happens if I look? He gave me that tired smile you only see on people who've already lived through the answer. You don't want to find out, he said. And that was episode 1. The second night I worked the Ryman, Caldwell introduced me to Ricky. Training overlap, he said. You'll split the shift. Ricky was younger than me, maybe early 20s, with the kind of grin that made you think he was either fearless or stupid. He wore a hoodie with the sleeves cut off and tapped the guideline sheet with his finger like it was the punchline of a joke. Don't look at the windows, close magic doors, don't clap for ghosts. Got it. I didn't laugh. Not after what I saw the night before. The building was restless that night. You could hear it in the rafters, the groan of beams, the flutter of something not quite pigeons. The air was heavy, humid even though the AC rattled on. I kept my eyes down when I passed the stained glass, remembering the glow, the way it had felt like morning pushing its way through. Ricky didn't bother. He leaned back on the pews, looking right up at the colored panes. Ain't nothing up there, he said. It's just glass. Don't, I told him. Trust me. But he smirked, and the glass caught his eye, and for half a second I thought I saw it again, that shimmer, like sunlight trapped in amber. Ricky blinked hard and shook his head. Huh. That's weird. Thought I saw, I don't know. Never mind. He didn't mention it again. The real trouble came after 3 a.m. That's the hour Caldwell had circled on the sheet, bold letters, the stage must remain empty. I set myself up in the wings, watching. Ricky wandered the aisles, kicking at the wooden floor like a bored kid in church. Then he laughed. Hey! Look! I froze. There was someone standing center stage. A tall figure, thin, hair hanging down to their shoulders. Could have been a woman. Could have been a man. Could have been anyone. They were barefoot, clothes white as choir robes. But their face was shadowed, like the stage lights burned everything except their features. Yo! Ricky shouted. You're not supposed to be here. Rule 4. If they answer, it's safe. If they don't, leave them alone. I hissed, don't talk to it. But Ricky stepped right up to the edge of the stage. What, you scared? Hey, lady. You lost. The figure didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stood there, robes bright, face dark. Ricky clapped his hands. A loud crack in the empty hall. Encore. The sound echoed too long. Longer than a clap should echo in that room. And the figure turned its head not toward him. Toward me. I can't explain what it felt like, having that shadow face tilt in my direction. My gut flipped. The warmth I'd felt by the stained glass rushed back, hotter now, searing the inside of my chest like I'd swallowed a mouthful of sunrise. I dropped my eyes to the floor. My vision swam, edges bleaching white. Hell's wrong with you? Ricky laughed, but his voice cracked. It's just. Then silence. I opened my eyes, and the stage was empty. But Ricky was gone. I found him an hour later, in the balcony. He was curled up against the rail, shivering, hoodie damp with sweat. His eyes were bloodshot. His lips blistered red, like sunburn. When I touched his shoulder, he flinched. Too bright, he whispered. Too bright in there. I asked him what he saw. He just shook his head, muttering the same thing, too bright. At shift's end, Caldwell came to relieve us. He barely looked at Ricky, just muttered, another one, like he'd seen it before. Then he pulled me aside. You followed the guidelines, he said. That's why you're fine. Don't let the other ones drag you down with them. If they don't listen, it's on them. Who was it on the stage? I asked. He looked me dead in the eye. Not who. What? Then he walked Ricky out into the dawn. I didn't sleep that morning. I sat in my apartment, shades drawn tight, staring at the guideline sheet. It hit me then. The rules weren't about keeping ghosts out. They were about keeping something insomething tied to daylight, to faces too bright to see, to doors that open where no sun should reach. Hemera. I didn't know the name yet. But I could feel it. The goddess of day was inside the Ryman. And the rules were the only thing holding her back. I didn't want to come back for a third shift. I'll admit that. After seeing Ricky vanish from the stage and reappear sunburned and broken, after feeling the heat in my own chest when that thing turned its head toward me, I wanted to run. But rent don't pay itself. And Caldwell called me that afternoon. You coming in tonight? His voice wasn't a question. It was an expectation. I said yes. Ricky was already there when I arrived. He looked worse. His eyes were pink and watery, and he wore sunglasses inside, muttering that the overhead fluorescents were too damn bright. Don't you think it's funny, he said, leaning against the pews, that they call it the Mother Church? Like a church for the sun. Don't start, I warned. He grinned. She was looking at you, you know. Not me. You ever wonder why? I walked off before he could finish. The building breathed differently that night. The wood popped like it was expanding, and the air smelled faintly of ozone, like before a storm. I kept moving, not daring to pause near the stained glass. At 12:15, Ricky disappeared again. This time not into thin air, but into the stairwell. I found him crouched on the steps, rocking like a child. He had his phone out, the screen brightness maxed, flashlight on. He was holding it up to his face, staring into it until tears ran down his cheeks. Can't get enough, he whispered. It's never enough. I snatched the phone from his hands. He clawed at me but didn't fight hard. His pupils shrank to pinpricks when I killed the flashlight. During my break, I pulled out my own phone and started searching. Ryman Auditorium hauntings. I'd expected ghost stories. Country stars walking the halls, Confederate soldiers in the rafters. And I found those plenty of them. But buried in a blog about Nashville folklore, I found a different story. A preacher in the 1800s had warned that the ground the auditorium was built on was unsuitable for holy purpose. Said it was a place where the light comes where it does not belong. Said dawn broke unnaturally on that slope. The blog called it superstition. But I knew better. I didn't get much further before my shift ended. Walking out into the Nashville morning, I saw her. Miss Hattie. She was perched on the bench outside the Ryman gates, long skirt brushing her ankles, hat tipped low. I didn't know her name then. I only knew she was a local fixture, the kind of woman who sold sweet tea out of a cooler on Sundays and told fortunes on Thursdays. You been inside nights, haven't you? She said, without preamble. I stopped. How'd you know? Her laugh was soft, raspy. Honey, I've seen a dozen like you. Pale as eggshell, eyes twitching like you ain't slept. The Ryman marks its keepers. I sat beside her. What's in there? She turned her head slow, so I couldn't miss the gravity in her eyes. Not ghost. Not demon. Not angel. She older than all that. She's day itself. She whispered the name like it burned. Hemera. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, the guideline sheet spread in front of me, Ricky's sunglasses in my pocket, and that name circling my brain. Hemera. The goddess of day. The one who wakes the world. The one who isn't supposed to be trapped in the dark. And she was inside the Ryman. I couldn't stop turning the name over in my head, Hemera. I looked her up. Mythology sites, dusty PDF scans of classics, professors' lecture notes, even a half-busted ebook of Hesiod's Theogony. All said the same, Hemera is day. Not the sun, not Helios, not Apollo, but day itself, personified. Daughter of Nyx, the night. She rose from Tartarus at dawn, retreated again at dusk. A cycle. A boundary. What caught me was a fragment of an old translation, day, when unbound, consumes. That explained the guidelines. The Ryman wasn't haunted, it was a cage. The windows, the doors, the stage, they weren't just architectural features. They were pressure valves, ways to keep day from leaking out where night belonged. And Ricky was already prying at the cracks. On my fourth night, he showed up looking like he hadn't slept in days. Lips chapped, skin blotched red like he'd been under a tanning bed too long. "You ever think about just letting her in?" he asked as we walked the balcony. "Like, what if the rules are the problem? What if we're keeping her from what she wants?" "What she wants isn't good for us," I snapped. But he just smiled, that thin, fevered smile. "You don't know that." I tried to stick to the guidelines. Eyes down from the stained glass after midnight. Shut the door at 2:13. Kept the stage empty between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock. Ricky didn't. At 2:13, when the latch clicked, I was halfway there, ready to slam it shut. But Ricky beat me to it. Not to close it. To hold it open. Warm light spilled across his face, soft at first, like a sunrise through a bedroom curtain. He leaned into it, pupils shrinking, lips parting like he was about to kiss someone. "Don't!" I barked. "Shut it!" But he didn't move. The light sharpened, grew harsher. His skin flushed crimson, sweat beading on his forehead. Finally I threw my shoulder into him, knocking him back, slamming the door shut so hard the frame rattled. His scream echoed down the hall. I dragged him into the wings, panting. His arms were blistered where the light had touched him, angry red streaks like burns. Still, he smiled. "She spoke to me," he whispered. "Said my name." I didn't hear a thing. When Caldwell arrived at shift's end, I showed him Ricky's arms. He just nodded grimly. "You closed the door?" "Yeah. Just in time." "Good," Caldwell said. "Never let it stay open. The light spreads fast." That was it. No sympathy for Ricky. No explanations for me. Just the same weary acceptance, like he'd seen this 100 times. I pressed him. "What is she? Why here?" He gave me a look that almost cracked his calm. The Ryman was built wrong. Or maybe it was built exactly right. Depends how you look at it. Then he walked off, leaving me with Ricky groaning in the pews and my heart hammering like a kick drum. I didn't wait for sleep when I got home. I went back online, digging deeper. And I found something. A scanned article from the Nashville Banner, 1892. It mentioned construction delays on the Ryman site. How workers reported unnatural light seeping through the ground at night. How several men refused to continue, claiming the morning came early in the foundation pit. The reporter called it superstition. But the foreman was quoted saying, "We covered it with brick and stone. We buried it. But we can still feel the heat." I sat back, blood cold. The Ryman wasn't just a building on haunted ground. It was a lid on a furnace. And Hemera wasn't trapped inside. She was leaking out. Miss Hattie found me before my next shift. I was sitting on the curb by the side entrance, sipping gas station coffee, trying to convince myself to go in. "You're pale, baby," she said, lowering herself onto the step beside me. "The light's already touching you." I didn't argue. I just asked, "What do I do?" She gave me a look, long and steady. "You follow the rules. But you know rules are only words, don't you? They only work because you believe them. The real rule ain't written down." I frowned. "Then what is it?" Her mouth twitched into a bitter smile. "Don't let her know you see her. The moment you see the day in the dark and admit you see it, you're hers." She squeezed my hand with surprising strength. "That boy with you, the one burned red? He's already seen too much." Inside, Ricky was waiting on the pews, sunglasses on, arms wrapped in gauze that peeked out under his hoodie. "They tried to bandage me," he said. "But she'll heal me. She already started. Look." He peeled back the wrap to show raw skin. It should have been blistered. But instead, faint golden light pulsed under it, like veins lit from within. I gagged. "Don't show me that," I hissed. He laughed. "You're scared of her. But she's beautiful. She's freedom." We made it to 3 a.m. without incident. I was in the wings, watching the stage. Ricky sat 3 rows back, humming under his breath. Then he stood up. Before I could stop him, he climbed the steps and walked out to center stage. He lifted his arms like a preacher, head tilted back, glasses falling away. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark. And she answered. The air above him shimmered, like heat rising from asphalt. Shapes bent, twisted white gold threads pulling together. A figure forming, taller than human, face too bright to resolve. The warmth hit me like a furnace door swinging open. My vision whited out around the edges. I dropped to my knees, squeezing my eyes shut, heart slamming. "See me!" Ricky shouted. His voice echoed unnaturally, overlapping itself. "I see you." Her light swelled. And then, the fire alarm shrieked. Caldwell burst from the side door, slamming a switch on the wall. The stage lights cut, plunging everything into shadow. The shimmer snapped like a soap bubble. When I opened my eyes, Ricky was sprawled on the boards, gasping, his body steaming in the cold air. Caldwell dragged him off stage like he weighed nothing. "Never let them call to her," he barked at me. "If she hears her name, she'll step through." I stammered, she was almost here." He silenced me with a glare. "You keep your damn head down. That's how you survive." After shift, I found Miss Hattie still waiting outside. I told her what happened. She shook her head slow. "That fool boy's already lost. Once you call to the day at night, you don't come back. He'll burn out before long." I asked her if there was any way to stop it. Any way to stop her. She gave me a sad smile. "Baby, you don't stop the day. You just survive it." I went home at dawn, blinds pulled tight, stomach sick. Because for the first time, I realized the rules weren't written for us. They were written to contain her. And Ricky had just cracked the glass. Ricky didn't show up for shift change. Caldwell didn't mention it. Just handed me the keys and said, "Walk the halls. Keep the rules." But halfway through the night, I saw him. Not where he should have been. I found him in the balcony, perched on the rail like a crow, sunglasses gone, eyes glowing faintly like embers. He didn't look at me. He was staring straight up into the stained glass windows, lips moving soundlessly. When I called his name, he vanished. Not walked away. Not slipped into the shadows. Just gone. The rest of the shift was worse. I'd passed the lobby, there he was, leaning against the concession stand. Blink, gone. Turn a corner into the dressing rooms, there he stood in the mirror, watching me, though there was nothing in the room itself. Everywhere I went, Ricky was there and not there, a reflection without a body. And every time, I felt the warmth return, pressing on my ribs like a fever. After shift, I couldn't stand not knowing anymore. I drove to the Metro archives, begged the clerk to let me see anything on the Ryman's construction. She pointed me to a cabinet full of old scans and brittle blueprints. The layout was strange, too deliberate. Every window perfectly aligned with sunrise or sunset angles. Doors positioned on compass points. The stage set exactly where dawn light would strike if the roof weren't there. It wasn't just a theater. It was a sundial. A trap designed to channel light, to keep it flowing in cycles. Only something had gone wrong. The guidelines were patchwork rituals to fix the cracks when the original design faltered. And now Ricky was widening those cracks. That evening, I called Miss Hattie. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to hear her voice steady me. She answered on the third ring. I seen it, she said, before I spoke a word. The light's leaking further. You noticed? My throat tightened. What do you mean? Sun's been breaking wrong the past 2 mornings. Too early. Too bright. My tomatoes bloomed overnight, then withered before I picked them. I gripped the phone. It's spreading. Her sigh crackled through the line. Baby, they don't belong where it ain't meant to be. You and me. We're standing in the spill. Won't be long before Nashville feels it, too. That night, Ricky came back in the flesh. Or something close to it. I found him on stage, barefoot, skin glowing faintly under his hoodie. He turned as I entered, smiling wide. She's not in there anymore, he said. His voice layered again, like an echo on top of itself. She's everywhere. She's waking up. The air shimmered behind him. Heat bent the wood. I backed away, heart racing. But Ricky just spread his arms, basking in it. She promised me I'll never sleep again. I'll live in the day forever. His laugh cracked, high and wild. And for the first time, I believed him. When Caldwell arrived at dawn, I tried to tell him what I'd seen. That Ricky wasn't just breaking the rules anymore, that Hemera was slipping past the Ryman. But he just looked at me with dead eyes. You think this city ain't been living with it for 100 years, he muttered. We just keep it from burning all at once. Then he walked away, leaving me with the rising sun and the taste of ash in my mouth. The first sign came on a Tuesday morning. Traffic lights on Broadway all flipped green at once. Every direction. A dozen horns blared, tires screeched, and 3 cars collided right outside the Ryman's doors. Folks said the grid just glitched. But I saw it for what it was. The system that marked time to cycle, the order it was slipping. The second sign came the next night, during my rounds. The Ryman's windows bled daylight at 3 a.m. Not bright, not blinding. Just a faint golden glow seeping through the stained glass like sunrise underwater. I pressed my hand to the glass, and it was warm. Too warm. And somewhere far above, I swear I heard birdsong. I went looking for Ricky then. I found him out back in the alley, crouched by the dumpsters, muttering in a language I didn't recognize. His hands were smeared with something pale, chalky-looked like crushed limestone. He'd drawn a circle on the asphalt, symbols spiraling outward. When he looked up, his eyes burned like twin suns. She's hungry, he whispered. And I'm feeding her. Every hour. Every second. You can't stop it. You can only burn with us. He lunged toward me, and I stumbled back. But instead of striking, he pressed his glowing palm to my chest. Heat surged into me. My vision swam. For a split second, I saw it. A sky with no stars, no moon. Just endless white fire stretching across eternity. A world where night never existed. And in the heart of it, she waited. Hemera. Her face wasn't human. It was light shaped into a mask, too bright to stare at, too sharp to ignore. Her voice was Ricky's voice, Caldwell's voice, Miss Hattie's voice, all layered together. The night was stolen. Return it, or be devoured. When I blinked, I was back in the alley. Ricky was gone. But the circle still glowed faintly on the asphalt, pulsing like a heartbeat. I barely made it home. My chest burned like a brand. That night, I dreamed of the Ryman, but the pews were empty stone thrones, the stage a blazing altar. Ricky stood center stage, arms raised, chanting. No more rules. No more darkness. Only day. Only fire. The glass above cracked, pouring light straight down like a sword. And behind him, Hemera stepped forward, unfolding into the world. I woke gasping, the sunlight already at my window, hours too early. The clock said 4:17 a.m. But outside, the sky was already gold. The sun rose twice on Wednesday. I don't mean poetically. I mean it cleared the horizon at 6 a.m., dipped back down like someone yanking a curtain, then rose again 30 minutes later. Half the city saw it. Twitter was on fire. Local news blamed atmospheric reflection. But you could see the fear in the anchor's eyes. Nobody bought it. By noon, half the clocks in downtown offices were stuck at 12 o'clock. The other half ran 30 minutes fast. The air shimmered with heat though it was late October. Miss Hattie called me in tears. Baby, my hens laid 5 times today. The rooster won't stop crowing. I don't think he remembers night anymore. At the Ryman, the stained glass windows wouldn't stop glowing even at high noon. I cornered Caldwell in the break room. He was nursing a coffee, hands shaking so bad the cup rattled against the table. You knew this was coming, I said. He didn't argue. Just sighed, rubbed his temples. You think the Ryman was built to praise God? To host shows? He looked up, eyes hollow. No. They built it to hold the day in place. Every brick's a seal. Every window's a ward. That stage ain't for singers, it's for offerings. The rules keep it stitched tight. Break enough of them, and the seams come loose. My throat went dry. Ricky's ripping it open. Caldwell laughed bitterly. Ricky ain't ripping nothing. He's just the hinge. She's been waiting 100 years for someone foolish enough to welcome her out. I should have left. Packed a bag, driven north, never looked back. But when I stepped outside that evening, the sky didn't let me. It wasn't night. Not anymore. The whole city glowed faint gold, as if sunset had frozen in place. Street lamps flickered uncertainly. Shadows were soft and wrong, bending away from buildings instead of toward them. People on Broadway stood in clusters, pointing up, murmuring. Nobody said, supernatural. Not out loud. But their faces told me they felt it. Something was wrong with the world's bones. Back inside, I found Ricky. He stood on the stage, barefoot again, skin lit from within like a paper lantern. His arms were outstretched, eyes wide. She's here, he whispered. She's everywhere now. Don't you feel it? The city's singing. The air shimmered around him. I swear I saw the pews ripple like water, the walls bending, the whole building breathing. And behind him just for a second he saw her. Hemera. A figure taller than the proscenium arch, face nothing but searing daylight shaped like a mask. The sound of cicadas rose to a deafening roar, though we were inside. She lifted one radiant hand, and the pews smoldered under her touch. Ricky laughed like a child at a birthday cake. I bolted. Caldwell caught me by the arm in the lobby. His grip was iron. "You can't just run," he hissed. "If she spills past the Ryman's reach, there ain't a darkness left in Tennessee or anywhere." "Then what the hell do we do?" I demanded. He leaned close, eyes wild. "You'll have to walk where she lives. Cross into her hour. Bargain or burn." I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to hit him. But I just stood there, the words settling in my stomach like lead. Because I already knew he was right. That night, when the city never darkened, I wrote this down. For anyone who might find it. If you ever stand in the Ryman and the rules stop working, then wait for dawn. There won't be one. You'll have to go to her. And pray she still remembers what mercy is. The city never went dark. Thursday bled into Friday in the same amber twilight. Neon signs flickered against a sky that refused to dim. The honky-tonks on Broadway stayed open because no one could tell what time it was. People looked drunk even when they weren't glazed, skin flushed from the heat that never cooled. It felt like the world had stopped breathing. Inside the Ryman, the air pulsed. The walls hummed low, like a giant organ pipe. The stained glass windows weren't just glowing anymore, they shined, sunlight bursting outward in thin, cutting beams. And the pews were full. Not with tourists or fans. With townsfolk. Dozens of them. All sitting perfectly still, faces tilted up, eyes glassy. Their mouths hung open like they were waiting for communion. At the center of the stage stood Ricky. He wore a choir robe now, though I knew damn well it hadn't been in the building the night before. His arms were spread wide, his skin flickering between shadow and light. When he spoke, it wasn't his voice anymore. It was hers. "Children of day. Rise." The pews stirred. People stood in unison, swaying like stalks in a field. Caldwell grabbed me by the collar before I stepped forward. His face was pale, his lips cracked. He shoved a crumpled paper into my hand. A sketch. No words, just a circle drawn with jagged strokes, a dot in the center, and lines radiating outward like a crude sun. "Step inside it," he hissed. "Say nothing. She'll open the way." "What way?" I demanded. His eyes burned into me. "To her world. Only place she can be bargained with. Here, she's too strong." I should have burned the paper. Should have run out into that strange twilight and kept driving north until the gas tank was dry. But instead, I stepped onto the stage. Ricky's eyes snapped to me. He grinned, teeth glowing faintly. "She's been waiting for you," he said. The air shimmered. The paper in my hand grew hot. So I knelt, trembling, and traced the sun circle Caldwell had drawn, pressing the paper against the stage floor. The wood splintered. Light poured through the cracks. And then the stage dropped away. It wasn't falling, not exactly. More like the ground melted, spilling me downward into pure radiance. My stomach flipped as gravity stopped meaning anything. When I could see again, I wasn't in the Ryman. I was standing in a vast plain of light. No horizon, no sky, no shadow. Just endless white gold stretching in every direction. The air burned sweet, like honey left too long in the sun. My skin tingled as if I was standing inside a sunbeam. And there she was. Hemera. Her shape towered, shifting, sometimes a woman draped in flame, sometimes a faceless mask of light, sometimes a blinding column that made my eyes water. Wherever I looked, she was there, filling everything. "Why do you cling to the dark?" Her voice shook the air. "Day is freedom. Day is truth. Let the night rot. It was never yours." My throat scraped dry. I forced out words anyway. "Nashville can't live like this." Her face tilted, mask bright, unreadable. "They can. They will. One day stretched forever. A feast of fire. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Ricky stepped out of the glow, still in his robe, still blazing faint. He laughed softly. You don't bargain with the sun. You worship it. Hemorrhous light swelled, searing my skin. And in that moment, I knew, Caldwell had been wrong. There was no bargaining here. There was only surviving long enough to learn what the real rule was. The light blistered my skin. Every breath felt like swallowing fire. Hemorrhous voice echoed across the endless plain, shaking the marrow in my bones. There is no night. There never was. The shadow was stolen, hidden. I will unmake the theft. I staggered, clutching my chest. My shirt was smoldering where Ricky had touched me before, the burn flaring under her gaze. Ricky was circling me now, barefoot, robe dragging across the radiant floor. His pupils had vanished, only white left, glowing. She offered me release, he whispered, though his words came through layered, like more than one mouth was speaking. No sleep, no weakness, no fear. Just the sun, forever. He turned to her, arms wide. I'll be your priest. I'll keep the day burning. And she seemed to bend toward him if a column of fire can bend, casting her warmth over him like a blessing. I should have been consumed. But as the light seared my skin, a thought cut through, sharp as glass. The rules. Every one of them back in the Ryman had been about marking time. Cover the mirrors, don't face the stained glass, don't acknowledge the other voice. They weren't random, they were ways to keep the cycle intact. And here, in her own domain, I realized something terrifying but hopeful. She couldn't erase night. She could only delay it. Stretch it. Steal its place for a while. The hidden rule wasn't written in Caldwell's list. It was baked into the universe itself. Day only exists because it ends. Without night, there is no morning. I forced myself to stand straighter, though my skin screamed. You're not the only one bound by rules, I rasped. Hemorrhous burning mask tilted toward me. You think I am bound? I am the binding. My lips cracked as I grinned, blood tasting like ash. Then why do you need Ricky? Why do you need a building to anchor you? If you were truly unbound, you wouldn't need us at all. For the first time, her light flickered. Ricky hissed, furious. Don't listen to him. He's afraid of the gift. Let me finish it, let me rip the night out for good. He ran toward me, hands blazing. I braced for the burn. But Hemorrhous stopped him. Not with a word. Just with silence. Ricky froze mid-stride, light guttering from his body like a candle in wind. His mouth worked soundlessly, horror spreading across his face. And in the silence, I heard it. A cicada's buzz fading. The faintest suggestion of cool air. The ghost of a star flickering against the white. Hemorrha leaned closer, voice like molten brass. The shadow calls. The thief tugs at my hem. Would you return what was stolen? I didn't understand her fully, but I knew this much: she couldn't end the cycle. She could only rage against it. The only way to survive wasn't to fight her fire. It was to find the shadow she claimed was missing. And then the plane shook. The light around us rippled like a curtain in a storm. I saw through it for an instant, saw the Ryman stage, pews ablaze, townsfolk swaying in trance. Nashville outside locked in eternal amber glow. The curtain was thinning. She was breaking through. And if I didn't act, there'd be no shadow left in the world. I don't remember walking back. 1 second I was staring into that endless plane of light. The next, my knees hit the Ryman stage. The world slammed back into place. The pews were empty. The air stank of charred wood. The windows still bled gold, but the congregation, those glassy-eyed people I'd seen before, they were gone. vanished like smoke. And in my hand, something that hadn't been there before. A notebook. Its cover was brittle, blackened around the edges like it had been burned. Across the front, in faded ink, was a name I recognized from Caldwell's files. Darrell Whitcomb. A night guard from 1973. The one who quit sudden after 6 months, never heard from again. I staggered to the break room and flipped through it. Most of the pages were frantic scribble-lines of half-burned text, sketches of suns and circles. But one phrase repeated, over and over, written so hard it tore the paper. Find the shadow. She can't see what isn't hers. On the last page, a single sentence stood clear. It waits where the light can't follow. I stared at that line until my eyes blurred. Where the light can't follow. When Caldwell came in at dawn, he saw the notebook in my hands and went pale. I buried that with him, he muttered. Under the stage. After she took him. You knew, I snapped. You knew he'd crossed like I did. Caldwell wouldn't meet my eyes. We lose people. Always have. But the seal held, long as the rules were kept. I slammed the book down. The seal's broken. Nashville's burning under false daylight. What the hell's the shadow? He flinched, like I'd said something forbidden. Don't speak it loud. She hears when you name it. That evening, I drove out past Nolansville, to Miss Hattie's farm. She met me on the porch, eyes red from weeping. The cows lay down in the pasture and won't get up, she whispered. They think it's noon, over and over. They don't know to sleep. Don't know to rise. I showed her the notebook. Showed her the line. She read it, lips moving slow. Then she closed the book, pressing it back into my hand. Baby, there's only one place light don't follow, she said. Grave dirt. Deep earth. She can burn sky, glass, wood but not what's buried. Her voice broke. That's why the old men planted the rules over the Ryman. They built a tomb with pews on top. That night, as I patrolled the empty aisles, I thought about Whitcomb's words. It waits where the light can't follow. If he was right, then the answer wasn't above. It wasn't in the glow. It was below. Beneath the Ryman, in the earth itself. And maybe that's where the shadow had been hiding all along. The door to the basement wasn't on any of the blueprints. Caldwell didn't want to show me. He muttered about never opening what was shut. But after the 4th straight day without nightfall, he broke. Took me down a narrow stairwell behind the backstage wall, flashlight shaking in his hand. The air grew cooler the deeper we went. Not fresh cool, but earth cool, damp and heavy. A relief, after weeks of burning light. And then we reached it. A rusted steel door, bolted 3 times over, a faded warning scrawled across the front in chalk. Don't let her see. Caldwell unlocked it with trembling hands. The tunnel beyond was stone and brick, sweat slick with condensation. I could hear dripping water somewhere far below. We walked until the Ryman's hum faded, until the air tasted like iron. And then we found the first sign. A boot. Rotten leather, laces long gone, half sunk in the mud. Caldwell's face went white. Whitcomb, he whispered. A few feet further, we found the rest. Not a body, what was left of one. A ribcage half embedded in the wall, as though the earth itself had swallowed him. Fingers scratched deep grooves in the brick. And in one hand, impossibly, he still clutched a stub of pencil. On the wall, scrawled in frantic strokes. She can't follow. Dig deeper. We dug. With bare hands, with a rusted crowbar, clawing at the packed earth until my nails split and my skin bled. Caldwell worked beside me, muttering prayers under his breath. Hours passed, though who can tell time anymore, until the soil gave way into a hollow. And in that hollow, we saw it. Not an object. Not quite. More like the absence of one. A patch of pure black, no bigger than a dinner plate, resting in the dirt. Not darkness like shadow, this was darker, deeper. Looking at it hurt. The light from Caldwell's flashlight bent away from it. The shadow. The one Hemera couldn't touch. The air above us roared. The earth trembled. I knew before Caldwell spoke, she had felt it. Hemera's fury poured through the ceiling, searing light bleeding down the cracks. The tunnel glowed red-hot, stones sizzling. She was coming. Caldwell shoved me back. "Take it," he screamed. "It's why you were spared. She marked Ricky, she needs you." I reached into the hollow. My hand passed through the black, and it was cold, so cold it burned. For an instant, the hum of the Ryman fell silent. The golden glow above flickered. And somewhere far above, I swear I heard it. The cry of a night bird. The first sound of darkness, clawing back. The walls split open. White fire poured through the cracks in the stone, searing across the tunnel. Caldwell screamed as the light touched his arm, the skin peeling away in sheets, bone glistening beneath. And over it all, Hemera's voice thundered. "Thief! Give it back!" I clutched the shadow to my chest. Or maybe it clutched me. Hard to tell. It wasn't solid, it seeped between my fingers like smoke, but heavier. Cold enough to freeze marrow. Everywhere her light touched me, the shadow pushed back. Her beams broke against it, sizzling into sparks before they could sear. For the first time since I'd seen her, she recoiled. Caldwell staggered against the wall, teeth gritted, half his arm gone. "Don't let her take it," he rasped. "That's the balance. That's the other half." And then the ceiling exploded. The Ryman above split wide, daylight cascading down the tunnel in molten rivers. Ricky's voice rang out in triumph, layered with hers. "She's here. The tomb is open. No more night, no more shadow, no more lies." The light surged at me, unstoppable, devouring. But the shadow moved first. It didn't leap from my hand. It unfurled. A shape rising out of the hollow, towering, black as coal dust and starlight. Not a figure, not at first, just the weight of absence given form. And then it grew eyes. Not glowing, not shining. Eyes like pits in the world, pulling every drop of light toward them. Hemera roared. The tunnels shook like a thunderclap. And in that instant, I understood. The shadow wasn't just a relic. It was her twin. The other half. The one she'd buried to stretch her reign. The thing turned its gaze on me. My lungs froze, my thoughts stuttered. And then so softly I almost missed it, it whispered. Not in words. In memory. Cool summer nights. Cicadas fading into crickets. The hush of a theater after the crowd has gone home. My own childhood bedroom with the blinds drawn and the street lamp cut off. Night. Not dead. Not gone. Waiting. Hemera's fire clashed with the shadow's pull, the tunnel filling with white and black colliding in a storm of sparks. Caldwell was lost in the blaze, swallowed whole. Ricky howled from above, she burns forever. You can't cage her again. But the shadow pressed harder, and for a second, Hemera faltered. The first true dark spot bloomed in the tunnel. And I knew then I wasn't just holding a weapon. I was holding the night itself. You've never heard light scream. Not the way fire crackles or glass shatters snow. Light itself, torn apart, wails like a violin string drawn too far, like a whole sky pulled out of tune. That's what happened when Hemera struck her twin. The tunnel buckled as her beams slammed into the shadow. White heat seared across stone, blasting pillars to ash, while the shadow swelled wider, pulling the fragments of dark toward itself. The clash wasn't quiet. It was a war of forces our eyes weren't made to see. Black lightning and pale fire grinding against each other, every strike opening and closing holes in reality. Above us, the Ryman's timbers cracked. Dust rained down. I heard shouts from the street, voices, panicked, running. The city was waking up to something it didn't have the words for. Caldwell was gone. I don't know if the fire or the dark took him, but his warnings lingered in my ears. That's the balance. That's the other half. And Ricky, oh, Ricky. He leaned over the edge of the shattered floor above us, face slick with sweat and light, his body shaking like a man possessed. She will reign, he gasped. The city will shine without shadows. Every street, every soul in daylight, forever, no more hiding, no more lies. But even as he shouted, I saw it in his eyes. Fear. The fire he praised was burning him, too. The shadow reeled, pressed hard against Hemorrhous radiance. For a moment, it turned its pit eyes on me again. And I swear on my life I felt it asking. Not demanding. Not commanding. Asking. Should I rise? The floorboards above split down the center, a gaping wound spilling blinding fire and thick shadow into the street. Cars screeched, horns blared, people screamed. The clash wasn't just under the Ryman anymore. It was seeping into the city. And me? I was standing in the middle of it, holding both futures in my hands. If Hemra won, there would be no more night. Her worshippers would see to that. Daylight forever, burning every shadow to ash. If the shadow one night would return with a vengeance. Not gentle dusk, not soft sleep. The dark would take back everything it had lost, and it would not come kindly. The world needed both. I knew that now. But how in God's name was I supposed to teach them balance? Hemorrhous voice thundered again, rattling the marrow in my bones. Choose. The shadow's whisper followed, cool against my burning skin. Remember night. Remember rest. Remember me. And above it all, Ricky screaming like a mad prophet, daylight forever. The air cracked. The city quaked. My choice hung in the balance. And then. The power went out across downtown Nashville. Every street lamp, every billboard, every neon sign, dead. For the first time in years, real darkness fell over Broadway. The city went quiet. Not peaceful quiet, wrong quiet. When the power snapped off, the whole of downtown Nashville froze for half a heartbeat. Then the scream started. Tires squealed, glass shattered, alarms wailed, and then died with the electricity. I could feel the blackout spreading like ink through water. 1 block. 2. 5. The whole grid falling domino style, until the only light left in Nashville was pouring out of Hemorrhous' chest like a white furnace. And she was furious. The ground heaved as she tore free of the tunnel completely. Her body wasn't flesh, it was daylight sculpted into form, a woman-shaped inferno towering through the Ryman's broken roof. Her twin rose with her. Not as tall, not as sharp, but wide shadows spreading outward, filling alleys, seeping across the Cumberland like spilled oil. The two of them locked in the heart of the city, their clash bending the sky itself. Ricky knelt on the stage above me, arms lifted in worship. Yes. Yes. Let her burn away the night. Shine through us all. But even as he cried out, people outside were running blind into traffic, stumbling into the river, clawing each other in confusion. The rules I'd been given hadn't said a damn thing about what to do if the fight broke the city open. So I made one up for myself. Keep it inside the Ryman. Contain it. Somehow. I climbed out of the tunnel, choking on plaster dust. The auditorium was a ruin, rows of seats snapped like matchsticks, rafters blazing white-hot under Hemorrhous glow. The shadow clung to corners, pooling around pews and stairwells, pulling against her radiance like two hands tearing the same cloth. The clash shook the stained glass windows until they burst, shards raining down like knives. And through it all, one man with no weapon, standing in a holy war between day and night. Hemera's head snapped toward me. Her face was the sun at noon, featureless, blinding. But I felt her attention lock me in place. "You carry him," she thundered. The shadow curled tighter against my chest, seeping up my arms. "Keep me," it whispered. "Balance me." And outside the blackout deepened. Whole neighborhoods plunged into dark. The people didn't understand what they were feeling, but I did, the balance tilting, snapping. If I didn't find a way to cage this fight inside the Ryman, Nashville wouldn't survive the night. The rules hadn't prepared me for this part. But rules only matter if the stage stays standing. And the Ryman was about to come down. The Ryman was bleeding. Not metaphorically. Not bleeding light or bleeding shadow. I mean the stone itself cracked open like split flesh, and red seeped from the walls. The place had always felt like a church, but in that moment I understood it wasn't built to hold concerts. It was built to hold them. Hemera. Her twin. The cycle. And I just watched it split wide open. The blackout outside deepened, but inside the auditorium, Hemera blazed hotter. Every scream on the streets fed her fury. Every prayer Ricky screamed added fuel. Her twin spread wider, seeping into the pews, curling under the balconies. When the shadows touched me, I felt relief. My burns eased. My lungs stopped searing. But then the cold sank bone deep, aching like frostbite. Neither side was mercy. Both wanted dominion. The Ryman had kept them balanced, contained. Now it was breaking. I remembered Caldwell's voice in the tunnel, "That's the balance. That's the other half." Balance. That was the key. Not victory. Not worship. Containment. And if the Ryman was the container, then I was security. It was my job to hold the line. The floor buckled, splitting down the center aisle. I staggered forward, bracing against a pew. The stained glass was gone, but the empty frames above the stage still glowed faintly, humming with a rhythm I hadn't noticed before. Like a pulse. I laid my hand against the nearest frame. It burned, but not like Hemera's fire. It burned like effort. Like strain. The Ryman wasn't just collapsing, it was fighting. Holding on. Waiting for someone to help it finish the job. "Contain them," I muttered. My throat was raw. "Keep it inside. That's the rule now." The shadow stirred in my chest like it heard me. Hemera's face twisted toward me again, furious. "You cannot hold me," she thundered. "I am the light that binds the world." But as she struck, her twin lashed out, two dark hands rising to snare her limbs, pulling her back. The two of them slammed into each other again, the collision blowing pews into splinters. I crouched low, heart hammering, and whispered to the walls. "Help me cage them. Help me close this." And the Ryman answered. Every beam, every brick, every nail that had held the place together for more than a century groaned, shifting under my feet. The wood bent, the steel screamed, and I realized this wasn't just a building. It was a lock. And I was holding the key. The lock was breaking in my hands. The Ryman's frame shook under each blow, timbers twisting, beams shrieking like a ship in storm. I pressed my palms against the cracked stained glass frames, felt the heat and cold mixing through the stone. Hemera's fire blazed through the rafters, her shadow twin stretched through the pews. They weren't just fighting each other, they were tearing the hinge itself apart. The lock wouldn't hold without me. And I wasn't sure I could hold without it. Ricky's footsteps thundered behind me. "You don't understand," he screamed, voice raw, ragged. "She's the truth, she's the light. If you shut her away, you shut away salvation." I turned. His face was slick with sweat, his eyes bloodshot. The man I'd known was gone, burned out, hollowed, filled up with her shine. He carried something in his hands. A shard of broken pew, whittled to a point. A stake. And he wasn't aiming for Hemra. He was aiming for the glass frames I was holding up. No. I roared, throwing myself between him and the frame. You'll tear it open, she'll tear the city apart. She already is, he shouted, spittle flying. Better she burns everything clean than leave us in the dark again. The words hit me like a hammer. This wasn't worship anymore. It was fear, dressed up as devotion. Ricky wasn't praising her because he loved her light. He was praising her because he couldn't face the dark. And that made him more dangerous than either of them. He lunged. I grabbed the stake. Wood splintered into my palm, blood slicking the shaft. His strength was wild, desperate, not human anymore. Behind us, Hemera's fire surged. Her twin's shadow surged back. The auditorium screamed like a dying thing, boards buckling under the strain. And through it all, the rules ran through my head: contain them. Keep it inside. Hold the line. If Ricky broke the frame, the lock would fail. If I killed Ricky, Hemera might claim him anyway. Either way, I was one slip from losing everything. The stake turned in our grip. His teeth were bared, mine clenched tight. I could feel the Ryman buckling under me, begging me to choose. Containment or destruction. Balance or blind fire. I knew what the building wanted. I knew what the city needed. And I knew Ricky wasn't going to stop until one of us was down. The glass hummed louder. The walls trembled harder. Hemera shrieked, her twin roared, and Nashville outside wailed like a wounded animal. I made my choice. And drove the stake down. The stake went in. Not into glass. Not into me. Into Ricky. He staggered back, eyes wide, the breath caught in his throat. For one split second I saw the man, not the zealot, not the prophet, just Ricky. The guy who shared coffee with me in the break room, who laughed at the creaks in the old pews, who said, "Weird place, weird rules." And then Hemera's fire caught him. He lit up like a wick. White flame poured through the wound, up his veins, across his skin. His scream was swallowed by the blaze, until there wasn't a man left, just a human torch burning away into cinders. No body fell. No ashes dropped. Just light, sucked straight into her chest. Ricky was gone. Hemera's head snapped toward me. "You deny me worship," she thundered, voice shaking the rafters. "You kill my herald." Her twin surged in answer, shadows stretching higher, wrapping around the beams to keep them from splitting further. The Ryman groaned, caught between them, every plank bowing under the weight of their fury. And I was at the center, my hands on the broken frame, blood dripping from my palm, the lock screaming for reinforcement. Hemera stepped down. For the first time since I'd seen her, she descended. Not light spilling, not fire lashing, feet touching earth. Her glow blinded everything in the hall. Shadows hissed and recoiled, but her twin held fast, anchoring itself to the walls and pews. She came toward me, every step warping the air. "You cannot cage me," she said. "Not thunder now. Not rage." A whisper. And somehow that was worse. The shadow coiled tighter around my ribs, the whisper in my mind stronger than ever. "You can. You must. Remember balance." I pressed harder against the frame, feeling it hum under my hand like a heartbeat. The lock wasn't gone. Not yet. But Hemera wasn't aiming at the glass anymore. She was aiming at me. Her light stretched forward, hot enough to strip skin, her hand reaching for my chest. And the shadow inside me surged to meet her. The world went black and white. No gray. No middle. Just fire and absence, colliding inside my body. I screamed, not from pain but from the sheer weight of itwo forces, older than memory, each pulling me apart from the inside. And over it all, the Ryman roared, begging me to finish the lock, to anchor them both before they tore the whole city clean in half. I thought the Ryman was the lock. I was wrong. The lock was me. Hemorrhous hand pressed against my chest, light burrowing into my ribs, peeling nerves raw. The shadow surged from inside me to meet it, cold burning the other half of me brittle as glass. Both forces tore at once, one searing, one freezing. And then they met in the middle. Right behind my heart. The impact nearly stopped it. I collapsed against the cracked frame, every vein in my body lit up white, every bone coated in black frost. I could feel the two of them clawing through me, each demanding more space. I wasn't just holding them. I was becoming them. My eyes burned. Not from smoke or dust, from the fact they couldn't decide what they were anymore. Every blink switched from white fire to endless void. My lungs seared on the inhale, froze on the exhale. My hands shook against the glass frame, one dripping blood that glowed red gold, the other weeping tar dark ichor. Hemorrhous voice filled my skull, I will not yield. Her twin whispered back, balance is survival. He is the hinge. And in the middle of them bottom. The Ryman groaned like a living thing, timbers snapping overhead. The auditorium's walls shuddered, begging me to choose. But choosing meant siding. And siding meant ending the cycle. I couldn't let her burn forever. I couldn't let the night devour everything. It had to be both. Which meant the lock had to be stronger. Which meant I had to be stronger. I dug my nails into the cracked frame, blood smearing across the glass. Contain them, I rasped. My voice was two voices at once, echoing in the ruined hall. Inside me. Inside the Ryman. Together. The glass pulsed. Once. Twice. Then light and shadow both surged through me, ripping a scream from my throat that wasn't human. The auditorium shook. The blackout outside deepened. And Nashville held its breath. Nashville was coming apart. Even through the Ryman's cracked walls, I could hear it, cars colliding, windows smashing, sirens strangled by dead power lines. The blackout wasn't just dark, it was unnatural. A silence heavier than night pressing on every street. People were screaming, praying, clawing at each other. The city didn't understand balance. It only understood fear. And fear spreads faster than fire. Inside, the lock held barely. I could feel it through my bones, the frame buzzing like it was plugged straight into my marrow. Every second I stayed upright was another second Nashville didn't collapse completely. But my body was fracturing. Light leaked from my fingertips in thin streams, cutting glowing cracks down my arms. Shadow seeped from my ribs, curling into the air like smoke, eating every scrap of dust and debris it touched. I wasn't whole anymore. I was the door. Hemorrhous face loomed inches from mine, the sun burning hot enough to blind. You cannot contain me, she said, not shouting, not whispering, just stating a fact. Her twin's voice slid through my skull like ice water, he already does. The two forces wrenched me harder, my chest tearing from inside. The Ryman howled in sympathy, beams bending inward as if trying to keep me standing. I couldn't tell anymore if I was holding the building up, or if the building was holding me. Outside, I heard its footsteps pounding on the street. Dozens. Hundreds. People drawn to the glow leaking through the auditorium roof. The blackout had left them blind, terrified. But here was light pure, searing. They were coming toward it. Toward her. Toward us. The shadow inside me hissed, pressing hard against my lungs. If they see her, she takes them. If they see me, I take them. Lock them out. Shut them away. Hammer's hand stretched closer, light spilling down my neck. Open the doors. Let them worship. Let them burn clean. And me? My hands shook against the glass, blood glowing, tar dripping, ribs cracking under the strain. The lock wasn't just inside the Ryman anymore. The lock was me. And the city was pounding on it. The doors shook. At first just a rattle, fist slamming wood, feet stomping steps. Then louder. Heavier. Like a heartbeat pounding against the Ryman itself. The crowd had come. Hundreds of them, maybe more. I couldn't see through the splintered cracks, but I could feel them, fear and desperation pouring into the auditorium like water through a broken dam. And Hemera felt it too. Her light pulsed brighter, licking against the walls. Her face twisted in something close to joy. Open, she commanded, voice rippling across the ruined pews. They seek me. They are mine. The shadow coiled tighter around my ribs, bitter and cold. Seal them away. If they see us, we consume them. They consume us. The lock breaks. The frame in my hands trembled, buzzing harder, bleeding heat into my skin. The Ryman didn't care about the crowd. It only cared about the cycle. And that left the choice to me. The doors cracked. Just a little, just enough for a thread of Hemera's glow to slip through. The crowd roared, voices colliding in screams and prayers and sobs. I smelled burning skin from here. People were already dying just to touch her light. My stomach turned, but my grip held fast. No, I rasped, voice shredded. Not them. Not tonight. Hemera's eyes burned into mine, white suns without pity. You deny me again. The shadow tightened, whisper sharp as a blade, deny her. Deny me. Balance is denial. Balance is silence. But the crowd didn't stop. Their fists slammed harder, wood splintering, hinges screaming. If the doors gave, it wouldn't matter what choice I made. They'd flood in, and Nashville would be nothing but ash and void. I pressed both hands against the frame, every nerve in my body screaming. Contain, I whispered. My blood smeared down the glass, glowing red against black veins. Hold the line. The Ryman answered. The doors locked. Not with chains, not with bolts. With force. With the will of a century-old hinge tightening shut. The pounding outside kept up, but the doors no longer budged. The lock held. For now. Hemera's scream split the air, her fury shaking loose another beam from the rafters. Her twin roared back, shadows stretching to smother the fire. And me? I was breaking, every bone cracking under the strain of keeping them both bound. I knew then I wasn't going to survive this. But maybe Nashville would. The heat scalded. The cold gnawed. 2 hungers. 2 prisons. Both in me. The frame wasn't a tool anymore. It was a wound wide open, bleeding light and shadow into my bones. Hemera clawed forward, every inch of her body stretching toward the sealed doors. Her twin lashed tighter, strangling my chest, whispering, hold. 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 I was the rope in a tug-of-war older than Tennessee itself. And I was fraying. My skin blistered. Blisters popped. The smell of cooked flesh filled the Ryman. My knees buckled, but the pews caught me. Every breath rattled like glass in my throat. I tried to speak, to beg, but the words came out as static. Like the dead intercom in the break room. The rules pounded through my skull. Do not break the lock. Do not let the audience see the light. Do not let the shadow fall on empty seats. Each one repeating, looping, until the words themselves bled. And then another line, new, carved across my brain like a hot knife. Do not leave the lock without anchor. Anchor. The frame seared against my hands. I understood what it wanted. Not hands. Not borrowed flesh. Something permanent. Something to bind the cycle, even if I fell. The Ryman had used plenty of anchors before mecha-takers, guards, desperate men and women who came here needing money more than safety. And most of them were ash now. I couldn't be the next. The crowd outside had gone quiet. No more fists. No more screams. Just silence. That silence scared me worse than the pounding. Were they still out there? Or had they been swallowed by the glow leaking through the cracks? I pressed the frame to my chest, shaking, begging the Ryman with everything left in me. Tell me how. Show me the anchor. Please don't let it be me. The rafters groaned in reply. Something heavy shifted in the walls. And then, like an answer, the beam that had fallen earlier, blackened and burned, slid across the floor toward me. Not random. Guided. The shadow whispered, "Anchor is wood. Anchor is history. Anchor is weight that remembers." The beam touched the frame. The light dimmed. The screaming in my skull eased. The Ryman wasn't asking me to burn alive. It was asking me to build the lock into itself. Hemera shrieked, thrashing against the rafters. Her glow flared brighter, scorching the curtains. But the frame held. The beam fused with a told wood, drinking down fire and shadow alike. And for the first time since the shift began, I felt the fight tilt. The lock wasn't just me anymore. It was the Ryman. I slumped against the pew, lungs ragged, skin charred, every nerve fried. But the frame hummed steady. The auditorium breathed steady. For now, the doors stayed closed. For now, the balance held. I wasn't safe. Not by a long shot. But maybe I'd bought one more night. The smell of burned wood and blood lingered long after the screaming stopped. Hemera's light had sunk back into the rafters. Her shadow twin curled in the corners. Both watching me. Both waiting. The frame was gone. Or no, not gone. Changed. The charred beam that fused to it now sat bolted into the floorboards, black roots creeping outward like veins. The Ryman had swallowed it. And me with it. I tried standing. My legs buckled, skin cracked, every joint stiff as rusted hinges. But something pulled me up. Not Han's memory. A rhythm I didn't choose, dragging me down the aisle, past the empty seats. Toward the wings. Toward the locked rooms I wasn't supposed to open. The keycard still in my pocket buzzed hot. The card reader on the stage left door flashed green. The lock clicked. I didn't swipe it. The Ryman did. Inside, storage. Or what looked like it at first, props stacked, old playbills curling in boxes, broken instruments leaning against walls. But deeper in, another door. Heavy. Steel. Etched with scratches that weren't from any tool I knew. A door that wasn't supposed to exist. The keycard pulsed again. My hand moved without asking me. The lock slid open. I smelled dirt. Old, damp soil. The room beyond wasn't storage. It was a pit. Steps led down to packed earth, walls carved with names. Not neat carvings. Not clean engravings. Gouged letters, desperate, overlapping. Names of men. Women. Some I recognized from whispered stories in the guard shack. And at the very bottom, wooden beams fused together, blackened like the one now anchored upstairs. Charred frames. Dozens of them. Everyone had bones tangled in the roots. Some collapsed into ash. Others still shaped like people, locked forever in prayer or terror. Anchors. All anchors. My stomach twisted. I stumbled down a few steps before stopping, clutching the wall. My name wasn't carved yet. But I felt it. A hot pressure at the back of my skull, begging me to scratch it in. The Ryman didn't just use people. It kept them. Bound them into its foundation, one after another, to keep the balance alive. The cycle was older than me. Older than Tommy. Older than anyone I'd met here. And if I didn't find a way out, it was going to be older than my body too. From the pit's dark, something stirred. A voice low and dry, words dragging like gravel. "You're late." I froze. One of the figures at the bottom, the bones weren't bones. Not yet. A man sat there, cross-legged in the dirt, skin paper thin, eyes sunken but alive. He'd been waiting. He looked like parchment stretched over wire. Skin cracking where the beams touched his ribs, hair white and stringy, mouth slack until he spoke again. "You're late," he said. "Should have been here a week ago." My throat dried up. "Who the hell are you?" His laugh rattled dust loose from the ceiling. "Same as you. Same as the ones before. Just a man who thought a paycheck was worth it." I eased closer, boots crunching on dirt. The heat from the anchored frames burned even down here. He didn't move. Couldn't. His arms and legs had been swallowed into the wood, fused so deep the grain pulsed with his veins. "I kept it quiet," he muttered. "Held the lock. Years, maybe. Time's strange down here." His eyes rolled toward the wall of carved names. They all held it. Some better than others. But the Ryman don't let you leave. You anchor, or you break. That's the rule they never wrote down. The thought hit like ice water. Tommy, the guard before me, might have ended down here. Maybe not bones. Maybe still alive somewhere in this dirt, whispering to no one. I swallowed hard. There has to be a way out. Something that isn't. I gestured to his fused arms, the splintered frames around us. This. His cracked lips pulled into something like a smile. There is. But you won't like it. I stepped closer, heart pounding. What? Break the balance. Let the light out. Or the dark. One or the other. No more rules, no more anchors. Just end. The air trembled as he said it. The beams hissed, the carvings bled resin. Hemorrhous glow flashed faintly through the cracks above. The shadow in my ribs throbbed hard, furious. Do not listen. He is rot. He is breach. Balance is survival. The man chuckled, shoulders grinding against the wood. You hear it too, don't you? The whisper. The one that sounds like safety. Don't trust it. It'll chain you like it chained me. I shook my head, sweat stinging my burned skin. If breaking the lock kills everyone outside, then maybe everyone's free, he cut in, voice sharper now. Ever think of that? This place eats you piece by piece. It'll eat them too. Just slower. You're not saving Nashville. You're feeding it. I wanted to argue. To tell him he was wrong. But when I looked at the frames, those charred cages stuffed with ash and bone, I couldn't. How many guards before me? How many janitors? How many anchors rotted in these walls just to keep the balance on a leash? And what made me think I'd be any different? The man leaned closer, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. You can still choose. Anchor and die slow. Or cut the rope, and end it all. His breath was hot ash against my face. And for the first time since I took the job, I realized I wasn't just fighting Hemera or her twin. I was fighting the building itself. The man's words clung to me like cobwebs. Anchor and die slow. Cut the rope and end it all. When I turned away, he laughed. A hollow rattle that followed me up the steps. Every step groaned heavier than it should have. The dirt floor seemed deeper, the stairs longer, the air thicker. It was like the pit didn't want me leaving. At last I shoved through the steel door, lungs dragging in cold air. The Ryman didn't look the same. The hallway stretched longer, ceiling lower, lights flickering faster. The paint peeled where it hadn't 5 minutes ago. I knew the place was old, but this wasn't age. It was intent. The auditorium had heard the choice laid out below, and now it was making its own, keep me close. I moved quick, boots slamming on warped boards, but every corner twisted. A hallway that should have led back to the stage curved instead to the lobby. The lobby spat me out in a stairwell I'd never seen. Every door I opened looped me deeper inside. The Ryman wasn't just haunted. It was alive. I pressed my back to the wall, breathing hard. My burns ached, my ribs throbbed with shadow, but worse was the feeling crawling through my skull. That somewhere in this maze, the building was watching me. And not with eyes. With memory. Every scream ever echoed here. Every prayer. Every song sung in the light. They weren't gone. They were bricks in its ribs. And now so was I. I ran. Didn't matter where, just ran. Past shuttered concessions, past portraits that seemed to follow me with eyes blackened from smoke. Until I slammed into another locked door. The keycard buzzed in my pocket. But this time, I didn't reach for it. Because I knew if I opened that door, I wouldn't be leaving. I'd be digging deeper. Deeper like the man in the pit. Behind me, the lights went out. All of them. Except one. A thin, white glow leaking through the door's crack. Humorous glow. She was waiting. And the Ryman was making damn sure I couldn't walk away. The glow bled through the crack like a sunrise caught in a coffin. I didn't touch the handle. Didn't need to. The door opened itself, hinges screaming like they knew they were betraying me. And the Ryman pushed me forward. The hallway bent into blackness, but I could hear the echo of boots on hollow wood, the whisper of curtains swaying, the creak of ropes above. I was being walked to the stage. The stage where Hemera waited. Not the flickering image I'd glimpsed in shadows. Not the afterglow in glass. The real thing. The curtains peeled back, revealing a space I almost didn't recognize. The Ryman stage was wider, deeper, swallowing itself into infinity. The pews stretched into black distance, row after row, occupied not by people but silhouettes. Dark figures, faceless, sitting still, hands folded in their laps. Waiting. The empty audience that wasn't supposed to see the shadow. And there she was, center stage. Hemera. Her skin was fire and dawn. Her hair was pure blaze. Her eyes were two suns you couldn't look at without burning. But she wasn't beautiful. She wasn't meant to be. She was hungry. Every breath she took made the pews rattle. Every twitch of her hand made the faceless audience lean closer. She turned her gaze on me, and the shadow in my ribs recoiled, clawing tighter, whispering frantic, "Do not stand before her. Do not bow. Do not answer." But I was already on my knees. Not because I wanted to. Because the Ryman bent me. She smiled. A terrible, radiant smile that cracked the boards under her feet. "Finally," she said. "The anchor walks himself to me." The figures in the pews leaned forward, necks creaking. My burns sizzled. My breath came ragged. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But the only sound that left my mouth was a whisper. "What do you want from me?" Her smile widened. The same thing I wanted from all of them. To open the doors. To let the day in. She extended a hand. Light poured from her palm, reaching for my chest. And I understood. She didn't want to kill me. She wanted me to become the door. Her hand hovered inches from my chest. The light wasn't warm. It wasn't fire. It was knives, thousands of them, every blade honed on a single point, me. I tried to back away. My body didn't move. The Ryman held me kneeling, spine locked, head tilted like I was already bowing. "Open," Hemera whispered. And the faceless audience leaned forward as one. The shadow tore at my ribs, hissing loud enough to split my skull. "Resist. Resist. If she enters, all unravels. Do not let her fuse." But it wasn't a command. It was fear. The shadow was terrified. And that meant she could really do it. Her hand touched my sternum. White hot. Blinding. I saw nothing but daylight, heard nothing but fire, smelled nothing but flesh cooking. I wasn't a man anymore. I was a doorway, and she was forcing herself through. Every rule I'd memorized shattered, each line splintering into ash. Don't break the lock. Don't let the audience see. Don't let the shadow fall. Gone. Burned to cinders. The shadow screamed inside me, wrapping tighter, coiling like a serpent choking prey. I gagged, my chest a battlefield. Hemera pressed forward, shadow pulled back, and I was caught between, bones groaning under the pressure. I could feel the split. One heartbeat pumping light, the other darkness. If either won, I'd be erased. If both held, I might tear in half. Through the blaze, through the chokehold, I caught a glimpse of the pews. The faceless audience wasn't silent anymore. They were chanting. Voices layered on voices, too many to be human. All screaming one word that made no sense until it did. Anchor. 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 They weren't watching a show. They were choosing. Hemera's lips brushed my ear, voice softer now, almost tender. "You were always mine. You just haven't accepted it yet." And the shadow roared back, "He is not yours. He is Locke. He is silence. He is." My body convulsed, lungs bursting, and in that moment I realized the truth. I wasn't Anchor. I wasn't Locke. I was both. And the Ryman had been bending me toward this all along. Her light carved me open. The shadow stitched me shut. Two halves, pulling, tearing, each promising survival if I'd just give up to them. But I didn't. I stopped fighting them apart. And I dragged them together. The pain was inhuman. My chest split like wood under an axe, ribs crackling, marrow boiling. The scream that left my throat wasn't mine, it was theirs, a chorus of fire and void. The faceless audience shrieked back, shaking the rafters. Some fell apart, smoke where bodies should be. Others multiplied, filling pews that hadn't existed a blink earlier. Hemera's hand shoved deeper, light bleeding into my spine. The shadow lunged upward, wrapping her arm like a noose. And I pulled them both inside. My body convulsed. I wasn't flesh anymore, I was scaffolding, a frame strung with wires of black and gold. My heart stuttered, caught between beats, then fractured into two rhythms that somehow synced. I saw through her eyes. Endless dawn. I saw through its eyes. Bottomless night. And for the first time, I wasn't drowning in them. I was steering them. The stage buckled. Curtains caught fire without burning. The pews swayed like a sea of shadows, every faceless head turning in unison. They weren't chanting now. They were waiting. Waiting to see if I'd collapse, or stand. Hemera's voice cracked in my skull, sharp with fury. "You are not strong enough." The shadow's hiss tangled hers. "You cannot hold us." And I answered, my voice no longer a whisper but a roar that split the hall. "I am the anchor." The Ryman howled back. Beams popped. Glass shattered in windows that didn't exist. The building shook like it wanted me crushed. But it didn't collapse. Because if I broke, it broke. If I held, it held. And for the first time, the Ryman was afraid of me. The audience rose as one, clapping hands that made no sound, filling the dark with silent ovation. And in that awful applause, I realized something worse than death. The show had only just begun. While the Ryman roared inside me, the city outside went black. Every streetlight in Nashville died at once. Every bulb, every screen, every neon sign fizzled out. What should have been panic screams was silence first. The kind of silence you only hear right before a tornado drops. Then the screaming started. At Broadway, tourists stumbled out of bars into pitch dark. Phones failed in their hands, batteries gone cold. Musicians strummed guitars that buzzed with static instead of strings. At Vanderbilt Hospital, generators coughed, then choked. Monitors flatlined all at once, leaving doctors staring at dead screens with living bodies in front of them. Traffic lights failed, and the horn started, then the crashes. And above it all the glow. Not the sun. Not lightning. The sky over downtown pulsed white, then black, then white again, like a heartbeat everyone could see. The Ryman's heartbeat. People swore they saw figures moving across rooftops. Tall, faceless, like the audience inside. Some swore they heard singing the ghost of a hymn carried on static wind. Others claimed they felt watched. Not from the street. From under it. By midnight, half the city was on its knees in prayer. The other half was looting corner stores for flashlights that wouldn't work. Emergency radio flickered one message, over and over. Do not approach downtown. Do not approach the light. But people came anyway. Drawn like moths. Some stood in the dark with faces tilted up at the Ryman's glow. Some pressed their palms against its walls like they were waiting for doors to open. And some never came back. Inside, I felt every one of them. Every prayer. Every desperate whisper. Every eye turned toward me. Their faith pressed like weight on my ribs, demanding I hold. Their fear clawed like knives, begging me to break. And through it all the Ryman whispered in my ear, soft and cruel. They are yours now. Audience and city both. Curtains up, anchor. Perform. I used to think the Ryman was a building. Wood. Nails. History. But that night, with Nashville blacked out and the sky beating white above me, I knew different. The Ryman was alive. And I wasn't just inside it. I was stitched to it. It started with a cough. Just a cough from somebody in the pews, maybe 100 yards away. But when their chest hitched, I felt my own lungs tighten. Then came a sob. A woman in the third row, her shoulders shaking. My throat filled with salt water that wasn't mine. By the time a man's screamed a sharp, panicked wail, the sound came from my own mouth too. Their breath was my breath. Their pain was my pain. Their fear was my blood. And beyond them the city. I closed my eyes, and there it was, the whole of Nashville, stitched to me. A man clutching his steering wheel on I-40. His pulse hammered in my chest. A child crying in a powerless apartment. My tears hit the floor before hers did. A pastor kneeling at the altar, whispering words into a dead microphone. His prayer buzzed in my skull like bees. Every soul in reach was wired into me. I was their anchor. But for what? Hold steady, the Ryman breathed through the rafters. Its voice was humorous, bright and cruel. You are the dawn breaking their night. If you crack, they drown. But I can't hold them all, I said, though my jaw hardly moved. My voice was already half swallowed by hers. You can, she hissed. Or they burn. I stumbled down the aisle, past shadows that weren't mine. My boots hit floorboards older than my bloodline. Each step cracked, and somewhere in the city, I felt someone falter. I realized the truth then. The guidelines, the rules, they weren't just for me. They were for all of them. Every tick of the flashlight beam, every locked door, every step backward at 3:15 at .m.it didn't just keep me alive. It kept Nashville from tearing in half. The rules were a dam. And I was the gatekeeper. At 2:59, I felt it, the city's pulse speeding up, preparing for the witch minute. Every light wanted to flare. Every shadow wanted to rise. If I faltered, they'd all break through. So I did what the rules demanded. Not for me. Not for the Ryman. For the city stitched to my skin. I raised the flashlight, my hand trembling, and prayed to a goddess I barely believed in, Hemera, the cruel dawn, while 1,000 strangers breathed through me. And when the clock ticked over, I understood something awful. The rules weren't protecting me from them. They were protecting them from me. 3 a.m. The second the hand crossed the line, my body split open without bleeding. I don't mean I was cut. I mean light poured through me, bright, boiling daylight, like Hemera had pressed a finger into my ribs and peeled me outward. The tether snapped taut. I wasn't just connected to Nashville anymore. I was Nashville. Every face, every prayer, every ragged breath, I saw them all in one glance. 1,000 windows burned into my skull. And when I raised the flashlight, the beam didn't stop at the pews. It spilled across the city. A woman's cancer vanished in the white glare. A junkie's heart seized, and then beat clean again. A house fire froze mid-flame, the embers curling backward into wood. Miracles. But where there's light, there's shadow. On the riverbank, a man in a hoodie stood still as stone. The beam touched him, and his shadow tore loose, running faster than his body ever could. He screamed, and his body collapsed like a husk, the shadow darting into alleys that hadn't been there a moment ago. In a hospital ward, the light hit a sleeping patient. She opened her eyes, but the pupils swallowed the whites, all black, and she began to sing in a voice too old for her throat. In an empty parking lot, a stray dog froze mid-step, its fur bleaching white, its eyes blazing like suns. It looked toward meth, rough, mean, then ran. Every miracle had a cost. Every life healed left another warped. And I couldn't control where the beam went. I wasn't aiming it anymore. Hemera was. Do you see? Her voice came from every rafter, every pew. This is dawn. This is what you carry. They will not understand. They will call it curse or blessing, but it is only truth. The truth of me. I tried to lower the flashlight. My arms shook. The metal burned like iron against my skin, though the light kept streaming. I whispered, maybe prayed, maybe begged, stop. Please. Stop. But Hemera doesn't stop. Hemera arrives. The minute dragged. My jaw clenched, teeth cracking against each other as the tether pulled tighter. Every soul in Nashville was a string on my ribs, vibrating at once. Some hummed sweet. Some screamed sharp. Together, they made a chord too big for human ears. I think it broke something in me. When the clock hit 3:01, the light snapped off. My knees buckled. The pews came back into focus. But the city wasn't the same. And neither was I. That was the first time I realized the guidelines weren't about surviving. They were about containing. Keeping the light chained to the Ryman. Keeping Hemera chained to me. And if I failed again, Nashville wouldn't just suffer odd shadows and whispers. It would ignite. I made it to sunrise. That sounds like nothing, but after what happened at 3 o'clock, it felt like crawling out of a grave. The moment the first gray light touched the stained glass windows, the tether eased. My chest still ached, my skin still burned, but the cords tying me to Nashville went slack. And in that silence, in that absence, I realized how much of myself I'd lost. I sat in the lobby till 7 a.m., staring at the guidelines binder on the counter. Its cheap plastic cover was warped like it had been in a fire. But the pages were clean. No new rules. No changes. As if nothing had happened. When the day staff rolled in, they didn't ask about the blackout. They didn't ask why my eyes were bloodshot or why I was clutching the flashlight like a lifeline. They just moved past me like workers in a factory, polite nods, eyes averted. That scared me worse than the shadows. Because it meant they knew. But I had to know too. I had to see if what happened what I felt was real. So after clocking out, I walked into Nashville. At a gas station near Broadway, the clerk was buzzing about a miracle. Said a guy dropped dead at pump 3 during the blackout heart attack, but when the lights flickered back, he just sat up. Drove off like nothing happened. Downtown, a woman whispered into her phone that her grandmother woke up singing old Greek hymns she'd never learned. The words weren't in her mouth, they were inside the air. On Jefferson Street, cops had cordoned off an alley. Folks muttered about a moving shadow that killed the security lights. Nobody would step close. And in a hospital wing, I overheard a nurse crying. She said 3 patients were healed. Cancer gone. Tumors vanished. But one of them wouldn't stop staring out the window, whispering about the Dawn Queen's eye. Everywhere I walked, the stories followed. Half blessings. Half curses. All mine. By noon, I couldn't stand the noise anymore, the gossip, the confusion. It was like echoes of the tether still clung to my ribs, humming every time someone told the story. So I went back to the Ryman. The doors were unlocked, but the air inside was different. Heavy, warm. It smelled like burnt wood and wildflowers. And on the stage, waiting in a shaft of dusty light, was Mr. Pennington, the rule giver. For the first time, he didn't have his tie on. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed like he hadn't slept in weeks. He looked at me, then at the flashlight in my hand, and said, "You lit her, didn't you?" Pennington didn't shout. He didn't scold. He just sat down on the edge of the stage like a man who'd carried something too long and finally set it down. "You lit her, didn't you?" he said again. I didn't answer. The flashlight in my hand was answer enough. He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I told you not to let it happen. That's what the rules are for. To keep her in check." I stepped closer, my boots thudding against the wood that had carried a century of gospel and country in secrets. "What is she?" I asked. My voice came out hoarse. Pennington looked up at the stained glass, where the morning light filtered pale and innocent. His lips moved like he was testing words too heavy for English. "She's older than this building. Older than this town. Older than America." His eyes cut to me. "She's Hemera. The dawn. Not a goddess in the sense folks preach on Sundays. Not a myth, either. She's an inevitability. Waking. Stretching. Needing a vessel." My throat dried. "And the Ryman is her anchor," he finished. "Always has been. Long before it was called the Ryman. Long before a note of music was played here." I wanted to laugh, but my ribs still hummed with the memory of 1,000 borrowed heartbeats. So I asked the only question that mattered. "Why me?" Pennington actually smiled at that. Not kindly bitter, cracked at the edges. "You think we picked the strongest? The smartest?" He shook his head. "We picked the ones who can carry. Not everyone can. Some snap quick. Some burn up. But you," he pointed at me, his fingers shaking, "you held her for a full minute. You didn't die. You didn't split. You didn't fall into her completely." "I almost did," I whispered. "But you didn't," he said. "That's what makes you dangerous." Silence fell heavy in the hall. I heard faint traffic outside, muffled through the walls. Life going on, unaware the dawn itself had almost cracked the city open. Finally, I asked, so all these rules, all these guidelines theory not just for me? Pennington's eyes darkened. They're for Nashville. You break one, she bleeds into the city. She's chained to this place, but the chains weaken every time someone stumbles. And if they break completely? His answer was a whisper, but it hit like thunder. Then daylight never ends. I wanted to run. But I couldn't, not with the smell of flowers still in the air, not with the pews creaking like bones, not with humorous warmth still coiled inside me. So instead, I asked, how many guards came before me? Pennington's smile fell. He looked down at his wrinkled hands, at the floor that had seen too many secrets. Enough that the walls remember their names, he said. Not enough to save them. Pennington didn't argue when I asked to see the others. He just stood, his knees popping, and motioned for me to follow. We walked past the stage curtains, down the back steps, through a door marked authorized personnel only. I'd been down to storage before. But not here. Not this hallway. It sloped downward, narrower with every step, the air turning colder, damper. The wood walls gave way to brick, old, uneven, mortared with something that looked darker than cement. You ever wonder why the Ryman feels bigger inside than outside? Pennington asked without turning. I swallowed hard. Yeah. This is why. At the end of the corridor sat a door banded in iron. No lock, no handle. Just a sun symbol carved deep into the metal. Pennington pressed his palm to it. The symbol glowed faint gold, and the door creaked open. The air that rolled out smelled of dust, candle wax, and old smoke. Welcome to the archive, he said. Inside, shelves sagged under the weight of boxes and binders, tapes and reels, yellowed paper stacked high. But it wasn't the records that froze me. It was the walls. Names carved into them. Hundreds. Maybe thousands. Each one shallow, rough, like someone had scratched their last trace into stone before being swallowed up. I reached out and touched one. C. Harper, 1957. The stone was warm, as if the name itself still pulsed. They were all guards? I asked. Pennington nodded. Every one. Some lasted a month. Some a night. Some long enough to wish they hadn't. He guided me to a wooden crate and pried it open. Inside were spiral notebooks, dozens of them, water-stained and warped. Journals, he said. They all wrote. Some because they were told to. Some because they needed to. A few because she made them. I flipped one open. The handwriting started neat, careful. Day 1. Guidelines seem ridiculous. Mr. P says keep them. I will. By page 10, the words were shaky, rushed. I felt the tether tonight. It hummed through my teeth. Can't sleep. Rules matter. Don't forget rule 3. Don't forget rule 3. By page 20, the ink was smeared like tears. She's inside the light. She's burning me. Help. The final page was blank. I shoved the notebook back, my hands shaking. Pennington studied me, his face unreadable. They all broke, didn't they? I said. Every one, he answered. That's the truth nobody tells you during hiring. The rules aren't just for keeping her in. They're a measure of how long you can hold her before you split. I stared at the shelves, the names, the journals. And how long do you think I'll last? I asked. Pennington's eyes glinted in the dim light. You lasted the witch minute without dying. That makes you different. Dangerous. Maybe you'll carry her longer than anyone. Or maybe, he trailed off, his voice dropping low. Maybe you're the one who ends the chain. And then, faint as breath, I heard it. A woman's voice. From the journals. From the stone walls. From the air itself. Dawn doesn't end. Dawn just waits. Pennington left me alone in the archive. Said he trusted me enough now to read what I needed. That didn't feel like trust. It felt like abandonment. The air was thick, the kind that clings to the back of your throat. I sat at a battered wooden desk with a stack of spiral notebooks and binders. Each one scarred, warped, or stained, like they'd been pulled out of a flood and never quite dried. I opened the first and started to read. October 1972 Guard, H. Daniels. Rule 2 saved me again. Thought it was silly to whistle near the stage after 1:00, but the second I did, the light flared in the rafters and something hissed. Not doing that again. I frowned. Rule 2 wasn't don't whistle. It was don't unlock the north stairwell before 4 a.m. Next journal. March 1984 Guard, Art Kellum. Rule 5 doesn't make sense. The pews don't creak when I sit in them, only when I don't. That means I'm not supposed to avoid them. I'm supposed to keep them occupied. My stomach turned. My Rule 5 was clear, never sit in the pews during your shift. They belong to her congregation. I flipped through a dozen more. Same pattern. Some guards wrote about different rules entirely. Some described the same rule but inverted. Some swore the order had changed from night to night. And always, the entries ended in scribbles. Half-finished warnings. Pages soaked with water or maybe tears. It hit me slow, like ice water down the spine. The guidelines weren't permanent. They'd been rewritten. Dozens of times. Which meant two things. 1, the rules worked, but only as long as you believed them in the form you were given. 2, someone or something was changing them. I slammed the notebook shut, breathing fast. If Pennington had handed me a binder with 10 rules, what was missing? What had been erased? And worst of all, what if some of the rules weren't safety at all, but leashes? I heard a shuffle behind me and spun. The shelves groaned like they were shifting. The carved names along the walls shimmered faint gold, just like the sun symbol on the archive door. And faint voices whispered through the cracks in the stone. Don't trust the binder. Don't trust the man. Don't trust the light. My hands shook as I shoved the journals back into the crate. Because if those voices were right, then every shift I'd survived so far hadn't been about keeping Hemra in. It had been about keeping me chained to her. That night, I carried the binder like a loaded gun. I couldn't stop thinking about the contradictions in the journals, the way the rules twisted from one guard to the next. The way Pennington never said outright who wrote them. So I decided to test one. Rule 5. Mine says, never sit in the pews during your shift. They belong to her congregation. But Kellum's journal swore the opposite. The pews had to be occupied, or they creaked on their own. One of us was wrong. 1:45 a.m. The auditorium was still. Stained glass bled moonlight instead of sunlight, turning the whole hall into a skeleton of itself. I stood at the end of a row, binder in one hand, flashlight in the other, staring at the nearest pew like it was a gallows. The wood looked normal. Polished, old, smooth from years of worship. But when I closed my eyes, I could feel them. The congregation. Breathing. Waiting. 1:58 a.m. I sat. The second my weight hit the wood, the air shifted. The hall grew warmer, thick with perfume and sweat, as though every pew filled at once with bodies unseen. And in my head, a chorus of whispers rose, words too tangled to understand, but all of them aimed at me. Finally. Welcome. Ours. Then the pew creaked. Not beneath me, beneath the ones around me. like hundreds of unseen figures leaning closer. I gripped the flashlight, ready to burn the whole place white if I had to. But the whispers softened, turned to hums. The rafters stayed dark. The aisles stayed clear. And Hemera didn't stir. When the clock struck 2 o'clock, the air thinned again. The perfume faded. The pew beneath me cooled. And just like that, I was alone. Alive. I stood, shaking, and looked at the binder in my hand. Rule 5 had been wrong. Not just wrong, dangerous. If I'd kept following it, I might have left the pews empty long enough for the congregation to fill them themselves. And then? I didn't want to imagine. That was when I realized something chilling. The binder isn't a survival manual. It's a test. Every guard is handed a different version of the rules. Some true. Some false. And Hemera watches to see who can tell the difference. At 3 a.m., the tether tugged my ribs, faint but insistent, and her voice brushed the inside of my skull. Closer, she whispered. You're learning. Pennington was waiting for me after shift. He always looked tired, but this time his face was hollowed, eyes red, like he'd aged 10 years overnight. You sat in the pews. Not a question. A statement. I froze in the lobby, binder under my arm, flashlight in hand. How do you know? He jabbed a finger toward my chest. Because she looked at me through you. Pennington collapsed into one of the office chairs, rubbing his temples. You think you're clever, don't you? Testing her boundaries. Poking at the rules. His voice cracked. Every guard tries it. Every single one. And you know where they end up. Downstairs. Names on stone. Journals full of screams. I clenched the binder until the plastic creaked. So what? Follow the lies. Pretend the contradictions don't exist. Let her own me blind. He slammed his hand on the desk, rattling the pens. You think you're choosing? She's choosing. You sit in the pews because she wants you to. You break Rule 5 because she whispered it was safe. That wasn't defiance, son. That was obedience. The words sank into me like glass. Because part of me knew he was right. When I sat, the air hadn't resisted. It had welcomed. What if that wasn't me outsmarting the binder? What if it was Hemera rewarding me for leaning closer? Pennington leaned back, exhausted. You've got two paths, same as the rest. Obey the binder, even when it's wrong, and maybe you survive a few more shifts. Or chase the truth, follow her whispers, and you'll last longer but you won't come back the same. Either way, she wins. He looked at me, and for the first time I saw real fear in his eyes. And if she decides you're the one who can carry her daylight full-time, God help Nashville. I wanted to argue. But in the back of my skull, a warmth lingered. Not cruel. Not harsh. Comforting. Like dawn pressing through a window. And with it came her voice, soft and certain. You are already mine. The Ryman was too quiet that night. Not peaceful quiet. Predatory quiet. Every footstep echoed too long, like the hall was listening instead of empty. I made my rounds, aisles, exits, stage, pretending not to feel her tug in my ribs. Pretending not to feel the warmth spreading up my spine. By 2:45, I stopped pretending. The pews weren't empty anymore. At first it was just light. Thin shafts pooling across the wood, as though the stained glass glowed from inside. Then it thickened, rising, shaping itself. A figure. Not a woman, not exactly. A silhouette carved from raw daylight, brighter at the edges, face a blur of gold. Hemera. She didn't wait for the witch minute this time. The flashlight trembled in my hand, useless she was light. She sat in the second pew, legs crossed, hands folded like she belonged there. When she tilted her head, the entire hall shifted, the rafters groaning as if bowing. Her voice didn't enter through my ears. It filled me from the inside out. Why speak through rules when I can speak to you? I tried to step back, but my legs rooted. What do you want? I whispered. She smiled, or maybe the glow bent in a way that felt like smiling. I want what I've always wanted. To rise. To spread. To fill every corner with morning. But you, her glow pulsed, warm against my skin. You make a fine horizon. The pews around her creaked, shifting as if unseen bodies leaned forward. The congregation she carried with her. I clenched my fists, fighting to keep my thoughts mine. You're chained to this place. That's what the rules say. Chains are only tests, she replied. Every chain breaks. Every dawn comes. The rules? Just games for caretakers too afraid to admit they love me. The binder felt heavy under my arm. Suddenly cheap. Plastic lies. She leaned closer, light spilling onto the floorboards. You felt it already. When I pour through you, the city heals. Burns. Changes. You call it curse. You call it blessing. But it is only truth. And it could be more if you'd let me. Her words sank deep, wrapping around the hollow inside me. The part that wanted to believe her. Because when she said, heals, I remembered the man at the gas pump standing up. And when she said, burns, I remembered the shadow slipping free. Both of them mine. The clock struck 3 o'clock. Usually that's when she arrives. But she was already here. And the tether didn't just pull my ribs this time. It drove them outward, like she was stepping inside me. Pennington's warning rang in my ears. If she decides you're the one who can carry her daylight full-time, God help Nashville. But Hemera whispered softer, sweeter. Say yes. And we will never be separate again. She was inside me now. Not fully, but close enough that every breath carried her heat. The pews throbbed with light. Each board pulsed like a vein. The stained glass rattled. The whole Ryman felt alive, hungry for my answer. Her voice filled the hollow between heartbeats. Say yes, and you will never know darkness again. I clutched the binder. My knuckles went white. Without the rules, you'll burn through everything, I said. The whole city. They want it. They crave me. Her glow intensified, and for a moment I saw faces in it. Strangers. Thousands of them. Crowds outside, bathed in a daylight no clock could stop. Their eyes glazed, their mouths open in prayer. They weren't worshipping God. They were worshipping her. And me standing in front like some sun-drunk prophet. The image almost felt good. Almost. I shook it off. You're lying. Her head tilted again, that same golden smile bending reality around it. Am I? Then why did you carry me so easily? Why didn't you shatter, like the others? She leaned closer, and her glow pressed against my skin like a fever. You are mine already. The rules delayed it. Nothing more. The clock read 3:05. Normally the witch minute was over. Normally she'd fade. Not tonight. I felt my body resisting her, but barely. Every second cost more willpower. Every second she pushed deeper. I flipped the binder open, fingers shaking, searching for anything. A line, a note, a scribbled addendum from some desperate predecessor. On page 12, in red ink, one phrase stood out. If she asks, do not answer. That was it. No elaboration. Just do not answer. I pressed the words into my mind like a lifeline. She leaned so close I thought my ribs would split. Her glow poured into my throat, begging for an opening. "Say yes," she whispered. "Or say no. Either way, the silence ends." The heat seared down my chest. My jaw trembled. I clenched my teeth and said nothing. The Ryman screamed. Not her, the building. The rafters cracked like gunshots, the stage warped, pews buckled. Every board groaned as if the whole place resented my silence. Hemorrhous Glow stuttered. For the first time, I felt hesitation in her pull. Not weakness, just awareness. "You would defy me with nothing but quiet?" she hissed. I gripped the binder tighter, every muscle on fire. "That's the rule." And then she laughed. A sound like sunlight striking glass. "Beautiful. Horrible. Then the game continues," she said. "But you will not win forever." The light withdrew, burning out like a fuse running backward. By 3:07, the hall was empty again. The silence returned, but it wasn't predatory anymore. It was exhausted. So was I. She's not bound to the witch minute anymore. The rules aren't just limits, they're renegotiations. And she's learning to rewrite them. I didn't give her an answer tonight. But I don't know how many more silences I can hold. The day after I refused her, the sunlight felt wrong. Not hotter. Not brighter. Just closer. Like it was leaning against the window, waiting for me to slip. I sat in my apartment, blinds drawn tight, binder open on the kitchen table. I kept rereading that red ink note. "If she asks, do not answer." It didn't say what happens if you do. Didn't say how long you could survive silence. But it worked. At least once. By noon I noticed the first consequence. My phone wouldn't hold a charge. Every time I plugged it in, the battery drained faster instead of filling. The screen glowed hot, too bright, like it was sucking daylight into itself. By 2 p.m., I smelled smoke. Not from the phone. From the air. The blinds glowed faint gold around the edges, as though the sun was pushing through. I wrapped towels along the cracks. Sat in the dim. Waited for 10 p.m., when the Ryman would call me back. That night, the building was worse. Not loud, not predatory. Just expectant. Every hallway hummed faintly, like wires straining under too much current. I kept to the rules, step by step, whispering them under my breath like a catechism. No whistling. Count the pews. Never answer the man at the stage door. The rules grounded me. They made sense. But the Ryman itself wanted something else now. At 2:50 a.m., before the witch minute, I passed the balcony. The seats up there weren't empty. They glowed faintly, shapes forming where no one sat. Outlines of heads, shoulders, hands folded in prayer. Her congregation. Waiting. The clock ticked closer to 3 o'clock. My chest tightened. I braced for her. But when the witch minute struck. Nothing. No glow. No heat. No voice. Only silence. And that silence was somehow worse. Because if Hemra wasn't coming through me tonight, she was going somewhere else. That silence stretched longer than it should have. No glow. No warmth. Just the creak of the rafters and the tick of my watch. I told myself I should have been relieved. For the first time in weeks, she didn't come through me. Didn't press at my ribs. Didn't whisper. But I knew better. The Ryman wasn't safe because she stayed out. It was empty because she was elsewhere. By 3:15 I caught the first sign. A smell. Not sulfur, not smoke, something cleaner. Like hot pavement after rain. The smell drifted in through the emergency exit at the South Hall. When I cracked it open, the air outside glowed faint orange. Not neon. Not lamplight. Just daylight, stretched thin across midnight. I stepped back fast. Slammed the door. Something was bleeding into Nashville. The radio on my belt buzzed, though no one else was on duty. Static, then a voice. "You hear it too?" I froze. That wasn't Pennington. Wasn't Martin. It was a stranger. Male, low, half-choked like he was speaking through heat haze. "She's walking 2nd Avenue, the voice rasped. "They're following her." I ripped the radio from my belt and shut it off. My chest hammered. If Hemra was outside, if she was walking 2nd Avenue, then she wasn't playing by the old rules anymore. And if people were following her, I didn't want to picture what that meant. At 3:30, the hum in the building deepened. The pews vibrated. The stained glass quivered with soft, trapped light. And then screams. Not from inside. From outside. Faint, carried through the bricks. Dozens of voices, rising together, wordless. The sound made the Ryman shudder like it remembered old hymns. I pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't matter. The sound wasn't just in the air. It was in me. She wasn't waiting for me anymore. She was recruiting. And the Ryman wasn't just a cage. It was her pulpit. I didn't go out. Every instinct screamed to open the doors, see what the noise meant, find out what was happening on 2nd Avenue. But I remembered something Pennington told me on my very first shift. If the rules don't tell you to leave the Ryman, don't. No matter what's calling. So I stayed. And the screaming outside climbed higher. By 3:40, the pews were rattling. Dust shook loose from the rafters. The stained glass brightened from within, as though it wanted to burst. I crouched by the stage, binder clutched tight, whispering each rule under my breath like prayer beads. Don't whistle. Don't count backwards. Don't answer the man at the door. Over and over. Trying to anchor myself. The sound outside wasn't just screaming anymore. It was singing. A low chant, many voices tangled, half in English, half in some syllables that bent in my ears. I pressed my forehead to the floor. Tried to block it out. But the words still slipped in. She comes the daylight bride. The Ryman's boards thrummed like strings under a bow. The whole hall shook with their worship. I realized, with cold certainty, they weren't singing to her. They were singing through her. 3:45. The aisle lights flared on by themselves. Not white. Not amber. Gold. Shadows bloomed along the pews, moving even though nothing was there. Shapes of people kneeling, rocking, swaying in rhythm to the chant outside. Her congregation had found a way in. Not with bodies. With voices. And the voices were making new rules I couldn't read. My binder felt useless. Pennington's typed instructions weren't written for this. This wasn't her witch minute. This wasn't her whisper. This was her claiming daylight in the dead of night and dragging the city into the Ryman with her. I held my breath as the phantom congregation turned toward me, pew by pew, row by row, until the entire hall was facing the stage. Facing me. And then, in unison, they spoke. Answer her. Answer her. The phantom congregation's voices cracked through the rafters, the floor, my chest. I gripped the binder so hard the plastic cut into my palms. I wanted to scream back, to shut them up, but I remembered the red ink warning. Do not answer. So I stayed silent. They didn't like that. The pews groaned. The walls shivered. The air thickened, heat pressing from every direction. The chorus rose again, harsher this time, not words but a single command bellowed in every register at once. Answer. I curled forward on the stage, teeth clenched, refusing. And that was when she came back. The stained glass erupted. Not shattered, blinded. Each window turned to molten gold, pouring light so bright it scalded the floorboards. Her shape unfolded in the glow, taller this time, no longer blurred at the edges. A figure of raw dawn, her hands stretching wide, pulling the phantom congregation tighter. "You test me," she hissed. Her voice made the pews splinter. "Do you think silence can save you forever?" I bit my tongue. The taste of blood helped. I stayed silent. Her glow flickered, furious. She swept an arm across the air. The balcony cracked. Wood rained down in chunks. The Ryman screamed like a wounded animal. "Every brick here bends to me," she said. "Every hymn sung here was mine before they offered it to another name. Do you think walls protect you from dawn?" Heat rolled across the hall, blistering, choking. My skin peeled just standing near her. Still I didn't speak. The phantom congregation rose as one, shadows clawing toward me, voices unified in a sound like glass breaking. "Answer." I thought my eardrums would burst. The binder rattled in my grip, pages flapping like wings. But in the middle of the storm, one detail caught my eye. In the margin beside Rule 5, penned in faint pencil I'd never noticed before, were 3 words. "Silence is victory." I pressed the binder to my chest and shut my eyes. The pews cracked. The balcony swayed. Her light bore down on me like a blade. And I said nothing. When I opened my eyes again, it was 3:59. The gold had burned away. The pews were empty. The building stood, barely. And I was still alive. But if she's willing to break the Ryman to get a word out of me, how long before she stops asking and takes the answer herself? After the gold burned away, after the phantom congregation dissolved, the silence felt heavier than the noise. I sat on the stage, skin raw from heat, coughing through dust. My binder lay open in my lap, trembling like it had a pulse. Those pencil marks, 3 words faint enough to miss for months, glowed to me now. Silence is victory. Not official. Not typed. Not Pennington's voice. Somebody else had left it. Somebody who'd lived long enough to learn more than the rules would admit. I tore through the binder page by page, squinting under the emergency lights. Page 3, beneath Rule 2, a single letter, W, scratched faint into the corner. Page 7, beside Rule 6, she feeds on replies. Page 9, scrawled under the printed text, don't believe the wage. The real payment is surviving. My stomach turned. These weren't notes for me. They were confessions. Breadcrumbs left by someone who hadn't made it out, or maybe someone who had, and wanted to warn the next desperate soul. By 4:15, the Ryman had gone still again. No hum. No heat. Just cracked pews and a rattling roof. I flipped back to the page with Rule 5. The penciled words seemed fresher, as if someone had written them just last night. Silence is victory. A shiver passed through me. Had they? I thought of Martin, his eyes hollow. Of Pennington, dodging questions. Of the men before me who vanished mid-shift. Maybe the rules weren't a manual. Maybe they were a battlefield log. Each survivor scribbling what little they'd learned before the dawn carried them off. And now I was writing the next line without a pencil in my hand. Every choice etched into the building, whether I wanted it to or not. By the time my shift ended at 6 a.m., I hadn't moved from the stage. Couldn't. I just sat with the binder, tracing the faint notes, wondering which of them would keep me alive and which were written by someone already half-claimed. The real terror wasn't the silence. It was knowing the rules were still changing under my feet. And Hemera was changing with them. The last night of the week, the Ryman didn't bother with build-up. No hum. No slow flicker of stained glass. No phantom congregation warming up their throats. At 2:59 a.m., the lights just went out. All of them. The whole building swallowed in black. And when the witch minute struck, she was already there. Hemera stood on the stage where I should have been, her glow carving the dark into jagged shadows. This wasn't her blurred, half-formed body of light. Tonight she was sharper, edges burning like sunrise over glass. She didn't sit, didn't whisper. She pointed one golden hand at me. Choose. The binder was heavy in my arms, pages fluttering as if caught in a wind only she controlled. What choice? I managed, my voice cracked dry. She tilted her head, and the shadows in the pews leaned with her. Break silence. Or break your rules. Either way you are mine. The emergency exit banged open behind me. A man's voice barked from the shadows. Hey! You're not supposed to be in here. Rule 7, do not answer the man at the stage door. My pulse slammed against my throat. If I turned, if I spoke I'd break the rules. If I stayed silent Hemera's congregation pressed closer, the air searing. Choose, she hissed again. The rules and her will had finally knotted into one no-win trap. Pennington's binder shook in my grip, the penciled words flickering faintly in the dim like they were alive. Silence is victory. But the stage door rattled harder, the man's voice louder now, demanding. Answer me. Hemera's glow spread across the pews, her smile radiant and merciless. One word, and you're mine forever. One broken rule, and you're mine anyway. What is stronger, your obedience, or your silence? The Ryman groaned around us, wood splitting like it would collapse if I hesitated too long. For the first time, I wasn't just a guard holding her off. I was the fulcrum she'd been pushing toward all along. And I had seconds left to decide. The stage door rattled like it was about to tear off its hinges. The man's voice kept pounding. Answer me. Hemera's glow pressed hotter, every inch of me screaming to give in, to break, to let one word slip free. I looked down at the binder. At the faint pencil that someone risked everything to leave behind. Silence is victory. I gritted my teeth, locked my jaw, and chose. I said nothing. The man at the door howled, rage boiling into something not human. His words crumbled into static, then silence. The door stopped rattling. But Hemera didn't vanish. She flared brighter, her shape so sharp I thought she'd cut straight through me. The congregation of shadows swelled, rows of faceless figures leaning in. You think silence saves you, she hissed. But silence is still an answer. My lungs burned, my tongue felt like lead, but I forced myself to hold the line. If silence killed me, so be it. At least I wouldn't be hers willingly. The building buckled. Pew after pew cracked open. The balcony groaned, ready to fall. I squeezed the binder to my chest, whispering only in my head, refusing to give her sound. The clock struck 4 o'clock. And in a flash she was gone. The pews were wrecked. The glass dim. My skin blistered raw. But I was breathing. Alone. For the first time since she chose me, I'd held my ground without bending. The victory felt paper thin, though. Because if silence had worked once, she'd only twist the rules again. And she wouldn't stop until she broke me or until I found the one rule she couldn't rewrite. When the sun finally rose, I limped out of the Ryman and saw what her absence had done to the city. 2nd Avenue was scorched. Buildings blackened, signs melted. People wandered barefoot through the street, eyes glazed with the same golden shimmer I saw in her. They weren't screaming. They were humming. Soft. Unified. A choir waiting for the next note. By mid-morning, the city felt wrong. The light wasn't brighter, just steadier. No flicker of shade between buildings, no shifting clouds. A gold haze lay over everything, too even to be natural. I walked 2nd Avenue slow, binder pressed under my arm like it was a shield. Everywhere I looked, people moved with the same rhythm. A barista sweeping a storefront. A cop directing traffic. A kid on a scooter. All humming the same tune under their breath. The melody I'd heard from her congregation. The scorched building stood like scars in the daylight, but no one else reacted. They walked past melted lampposts and blackened brick without looking up. When I stopped in front of a burned awning, a man with gold-glazed eyes glanced at me and smiled. "Dawn's already here," he whispered. Then he kept walking. By noon, I realized the binder wasn't just heavy, it was hot. The closer I came to clusters of humming people, the warmer it got, as if the rules themselves were straining against her pull. At one corner, a group stood in a circle, hands linked, humming louder. When I passed, their heads all turned in unison, eyes locked on me. Not hostile. Not welcoming. Just expectant. Waiting for me to answer. I ducked into an alley, breath ragged. Flipped open the binder. Between Rule 8 and 9, another pencil note I hadn't seen before shimmered faint in the light. The city is her stage. The words weren't old this time. They looked fresh. Like someone was still writing from inside the game. At 3 p.m., hours before my shift, the tether tugged my chest again. Not just at night now. Not bound to the witch minute. She wanted me in daylight. And Nashville was already singing her name. The pull didn't let go. By the time I crossed Broadway, it felt like a hook through my chest. Every step south dragged harder, like a leash drawing me where she wanted me to stand. And I saw it before I even reached the end of the block. A crowd. Bigger than the night gatherings, this was a midday mob, gathered on the steps of the courthouse. Tourists, office workers, panhandlers, suits all shoulder to shoulder. No music system, no instruments. Just their voices. The humming rolled together, low and steady, until it rattled the streetlights. And in the middle, sunlight bent. It didn't shimmer like heat waves. It twisted. The courthouse steps glowed with a sheen that made my eyes water. I forced myself to look, and there she was. Hemera. Not shadows this time. No hiding in the witch hour. She stood radiant on the stone steps, daylight spilling out of her skin like a wound that never closed. Her hair streamed upward, strands unraveling into beams of pure light. Her eyes had no pupils, just blank golden discs, searing against the haze. She was both there and not there, her outline blurring at the edges like the world couldn't quite contain her shape. And everyone knelt. My binder felt like it might combust in my arms. The rules vibrated in their pages, humming with the same rhythm as the crowd. I clutched it tighter, sweat slicking the cover. Hemera raised one hand. The sun dimmed. Not behind a cloud. Not natural. Just dimmer, as if she'd drawn a curtain across the whole sky. And in that moment, the humming people all turned to look at me. Every last one. Their mouths moved in unison. "He is late." My blood froze. Hemera's head tilted, and her gold eyes found me like she'd been searching all along. I wanted to run, but my legs locked. The crowd parted in a neat line, leaving a path straight to the steps. The hook in my chest yanked hard. I stumbled forward, binder clutched like a weapon. When I was only 10 feet away, the sunlight around her seared hotter, and her voice poured into my skull without sound. "You carry what is mine." The binder burned. Smoke curled from the leather edge. My knees buckled under her weight. Still, my hands refused to let go. Because deep in the spine, I felt something she hadn't expected. Resistance. Like the rules themselves didn't belong to her anymore. Her perfect golden face cracked, just a hairline fracture across her cheek. And her gaze flickered, for the first time, to something like anger. The crowd hissed. And the sun above us faltered, stuttering between noon and dusk like a broken bulb. The crack across her cheek widened. It wasn't blood that came out, it was light. Blinding, molten threads leaking like a split seam in the sky. The crowd gasped as one, then bent lower, foreheads pressed to stone. But her eyes stayed locked on me. The binder shuddered in my grip. Pages turned on their own, whipping in a wind that wasn't there. They stopped at Rule 3, the ink glowing like hot metal. At no point should sunlight touch the stage curtains. The words writhed, then rearranged themselves until they read. At no point should her light touch the rules. And that's when she reached for me. No hand, just radiance. The air itself thickened, wrapping around my chest and binder like molten wire. Every breath scalded. My vision bled white, edges collapsing until only her silhouette remained. Return them, she said inside my skull. They were written for me. The binder seared my palms, but I squeezed tighter. I don't know why. Stubbornness, maybe. Or maybe the rules had already burrowed into me as much as into the book. Her light coiled closer. I dropped to one knee, teeth gritted against the burning. Then something broke the pattern. From the far edge of the crowd, a voice cut through the humming. Low. Southern drawl, ragged with age. You ain't never ruled this place. The light around me faltered, just slightly. I turned my head. There, leaning against a lamppost, was the same old man I'd seen once before, shabby hat, tobacco breath, eyes like river stones. The one who'd muttered about the Ryman being a door. He spat to the pavement. Don't matter if you shine, girl. Nashville remembers the dark just as well. Hemera's face twisted, that fracture along her cheek spreading like lightning. The crowd moaned in unison, 1,000 voices rising to drown him out. But her grip on me slipped only a fraction, enough for me to gulp air and stagger backward. The binder snapped shut with a crack, searing the skin on my hands but cutting off her reach. And for the first time, Hemera looked less like a goddess and more like something cornered. Her voice roared in my skull, splitting me down the middle. Night cannot speak for you. You will burn with me. The sun overhead convulsed, flickering between midday and dusk, throwing the courthouse into strobe-lit shadow. The crowd screamed not in pain, but in worship. And I realized something then, this wasn't her at full strength. This was her trying to break through. Which meant she was bound by something stronger than herself. And I might have just found an ally who knew what. The courthouse steps detonated in light. No sound. Just a blast that flattened the crowd and seared the pavement white. I shielded my face with the binder, heat rolling over me in waves. When I opened my eyes, Hemera was no longer a figure. She was a column, pure vertical flame splitting the courthouse front to roofline. And she was angry. The fracture in her cheek had become a gaping fissure, spilling light that snapped and arced like live wires. The worshippers writhed in the dust, clutching their heads, mouths foaming with that same low hymn. But her gaze stayed on me. Mine. The word wasn't spoken, it slammed into me, rattling ribs and teeth. The air buckled. Windows blew out across the street. The old man by the lamppost shoved himself upright, eyes wild. Run, boy, he barked, voice cracking. She ain't whole yet, but you stay here, you'll be ash. He grabbed my arm, hauling me back toward the alley. My legs stumbled, but I moved because the light was chasing us, stretching fingers of molten brilliance across the asphalt. Everywhere the glow touched, things warped. Stop signs melted. Shadows evaporated. Even the brick seemed to ripple like wax. We barreled down the alley. Behind us, the hymn rose into a shriek. Half the crowd was on their feet again, but not walking, they were gliding, jerked forward in lockstep, eyes gone white gold. Don't look back, the old man wheezed. That's how she gets in your head. I gritted my teeth and kept moving, binder clutched so tight I thought the bone might split in my fingers. At the far end of the alley, daylight bent again. A golden wall flared up, sealing the exit. Trapped. Humorous laughter cracked inside my skull like glass shattering. You cannot outrun the day. The old man slammed his palm against the brick beside us, muttering something low and fast, words I didn't recognize, maybe not English at all. The wall flickered. Once. Twice. Then split just enough for us to dive through. We spilled out into a service road behind a shuttered diner. The wall slammed closed behind us, leaving the alley glowing like a furnace. I lay on the cracked asphalt, lungs burning, hands blistered around the binder. The old man knelt over me, sweat streaking his face. She's stretching herself too thin, he said, ragged. That's why you're still breathing. But if you don't learn what holds her back. He leaned close, eyes fierce. She'll burn this whole city clean. We crouched in the shadow of the diner, both of us still panting, the stink of hot asphalt in my throat. The old man tore a strip from his flannel sleeve, shoved it at me. Wrap your damn hands before you lose the skin. I obeyed, hissing when the fabric scraped my palms. The binder throbbed on the ground beside me like a living heart. When I looked back up, the man's gaze was fixed eastward, toward the courthouse. The air above it still shimmered faint gold, but quieter now. She's receding, he muttered. For now. Then he turned on me, eyes sharp. You don't even know what you're holding, do you? I know it keeps me alive, I said. That's enough. He barked a laugh, dry as gravel. Enough, he says. Kid, you're dancing with the oldest fire there is. You think rules keep her back? Rules just name the walls she's already pounding on. I stared. So you've seen her before? His jaw tightened. Name's Earl Carter. I was a janitor at the Ryman back in '68. Stayed longer than I should've. Learned things I couldn't unlearn. He tapped the binder with a crooked finger. I used to carry one of those. Not that one. Mine burned up when she got too close. But the rules? They're old. Older than the Ryman, older than Nashville itself. The theater just happens to sit where she's strongest. I swallowed, hands slick with sweat under the bandages. What is she? He didn't answer right away. He just looked at the sky, squinting like he could see the daylight itself flexing. She's the day. The person of it. Old Greeks called her Hemra. Sunrise with a body. Folks like to think night is scary. But day. Day strips you bare. Day don't leave you nowhere to hide. His voice dropped, harsh and certain. And once she claims a place, it never cools again. The words hung between us. The hum of traffic on the avenue. A siren somewhere far off. Then he leaned closer, breath sour with tobacco. But she ain't invincible. Every light casts a shadow. And that binder? It don't belong to her. That's why she wants it so bad. I glanced down at the book, still pulsing faintly. And if I don't give it back? Earl's grin was grim and toothless. Then maybe, for the first time in 50 years, we got a chance at holding the day off. Earl didn't waste time. On your feet. We can't linger. My legs shook as I pushed up, binder pressed to my ribs. The street looked ordinary: delivery trucks, pigeons scattering, a tourist couple laughing as they passed, but the light had that too clean sheen again. Like sunlight poured from a lamp instead of the sky. Earl moved fast, weaving through side streets until we reached a boarded-up church. Stained glass spidered with cracks, weeds busting through the steps. He rapped 3 times on the door. A peephole slid open. Eyes peered out, bloodshot but wary. "It's me," Earl said. "And I brought the one she's chasing." The door clicked open. Inside was dark, thick with candle smoke. The air hummed faintly, not her hymn, but something steadier. A different rhythm. My eyes adjusted. There were maybe 7 people scattered in the pews. All rough-edged, worn down, but alive. A woman in her 40s with a trucker's cap and scars across her knuckles. A gray-haired preacher clutching a Bible so weathered it was more duct tape than paper. 2 teenagers, brother and sister, by the look of them holding hands, their eyes wide but steady. Others too, every one of them marked by sleepless eyes. They all turned when Earl shut the door behind us. "This here's the guard," Earl said, nodding at me. "The one holding the rules." A ripple of recognition passed through the group. The preacher spoke first. Voice low, gravelly. "Then you're the fool who's been keeping her from breaking through." The scarred woman lit another candle, shaking her head. "She's stretching across the city now. We can hear it in the daytime traffic. Radio's gone to static, birds flying wrong. Won't be long before she don't need the Ryman anymore." I set the binder down on the altar, chest tight. Earl touched the cover with a trembling hand. "This is the first time in decades one of these has lasted. Means she ain't got full claim. Means we might have a fighting chance." The preacher leaned in, eyes sharp. "Tell us what you've seen, boy. Every crack in the rules, every time she's pushed. If we're gonna hold her back, we need it all." The candles flickered then, shadows stretching long across the pews. And for just a heartbeat, I swore I heard her laugh, soft, distant, threading through the hymn of the survivors. She knew where I was. She just hadn't walked through the door yet. I hadn't even opened the binder before the candles guttered. Not from wind. From light. A thin, gold shimmer leaked through the stained glass, spreading like veins across the cracks. The glass glowed so hot I thought it might burst. The preacher hissed through his teeth. "She's found us." Earl shoved the binder back into my chest. "Hold it tight. Don't let it open unless she makes you." The scarred woman snatched up a crowbar from beside the pew. The teenagers pressed together, whispering something too low for me to hear. Then the glass shattered. Light didn't just pour in, it walked in. It streamed down the aisle in ribbons, weaving around the pews until it coiled at the altar. The shape it formed was her, tall, perfect, face still split with that burning fracture. Her mouth didn't move, but the voice pressed down on us like weight. "Thieves. All of you. Hiding my words in shadows." The teenagers whimpered. The preacher gripped his Bible like a weapon. And me? My palms blistered again as the binder pulsed harder, pages begging to turn. The scarred woman swung the crowbar through the light. For a heartbeat, it worked. The glow tore like fabric, splitting into ragged holes. But the heat that rushed out knocked her flat, skin blistering along her arm. She screamed, writhing on the floor. Humorous laughter filled the rafters. Darkness breeds cowards. Day burns all clean. The ribbons lashed out, coiling around pews, splintering wood to dust. Earl grabbed my shoulder, teeth clenched. "Open it." I shook my head, heart hammering. "She wants me to. Nash fears it. That's why she pushes so hard. Open to the page that fights her." I fumbled the binder open. Pages fluttered, glowing like hot iron until they stopped on Rule 6. If you hear humming past the witch minute, do not follow. Do not echo. The letters burned brighter. Then they twisted. If you hear her voice, do not answer. Her head snapped toward me, fury blazing. Defiance. The walls groaned. Plaster rained from the ceiling. The air screamed with pressure. I clutched the binder to my chest and shouted not to her, but to the survivors. Don't answer her. Whatever she says, don't speak. The preacher pressed his lips shut, eyes squeezed tight. The teenagers buried their faces against each other. Earl clenched my arm, nodding once. And for the first time, Hemorrhous' voice wavered. The fracture across her cheek deepened, light spilling uncontrolled. She hissed like steam venting from a broken pipe. Shadow things. All of you. But night always ends. And then, in a blast of heat and broken glass, she was gone. The church was wrecked, half the pews ash, scarred woman writhing with burns. But we were still alive. And I understood now these rules weren't instructions. They were weapons. We hadn't even finished dragging the burned woman onto the altar when the siren started. Not police. Not fire. Something older. A deep, metallic wail rolled across the city like a freight train dragging chains. The stained glass rattled in its empty frames. Earl froze. She's burning something. The preacher's voice cracked. Where? A red-orange glow cut across the skyline through the cracked windows. Not sunset. Not natural. The shape of a block going up all at once. Broadway, Earl muttered. She's taking the heart of the strip. The teenagers clutched each other tighter. One whispered, "That's where Mom," before the other hushed them. The scarred woman groaned, her blistered hand twitching. I gripped the binder so hard my knuckles screamed. "We can't stay here," I said. Earl glared at the glow. His jaw worked side to side, as if chewing the thought. She's showing her teeth now. Means she's close to breaking through. The preacher's eyes narrowed. Then it's the Ryman she's after. Burn the rest of the city if she must, but her throne's still that stage. He turned toward me. And you boy are the one holding the only thing she can't touch. The weight of their stares hit me like a hammer. I don't know how to fight her, I admitted. Good, Earl snapped. Means you'll listen. You don't fight the day. You bind it. With rules. With witnesses. With shadows strong enough to smother her shine. Another roar echoed across the city, closer now. The night sky flickered wrong like a switchboard shorting out between daylight and dark. Earl grabbed my arm, eyes wild. Come on. We move now. If Broadway's burning, she's dragging half the town with her. And if she claims them. He spat, teeth yellow in the candlelight. Nashville's gone by morning. We shoved out of the church into a city alive with fire. The air was thick with smoke and gold haze. Sirens shrieked, not in warning but in mimicry like her voice riding every alarm. And above it all, on the skyline, I could see her. A tower of light striding over rooftops, fracture burning across her face, dragging worshippers in her wake like marionettes. And she was walking toward the Ryman. We reached the Ryman as the sky split. The old wood and brick shuddered like it knew she was coming home. Smoke curled off the marquee. Every street lamp around us blazed too bright, humming in her voice. Inside, the pews were empty, stage curtains trembling without wind. The whole place smelled like dust and ozone. Earl shoved me forward. It has to end here. This is where she's strongest. But also where she's caged. The survivors fanned out, taking their places in the aisles. The preacher raised his ruined Bible. The teenagers held hands tighter, whispering steady, steady. And my binder clutched to my chest, every nerve screaming. The doors blew open. She stepped in like the sun itself walked on legs. Taller now, burning, her fracture split wide across her face, light spilling like magma. The air went white-hot. The Ryman groaned like a ship about to sink. Return it, she roared. Day belongs to me. The binder's pages whipped open without my touch. Rules scrawled in fire. Words rearranging themselves in real time. Do not answer her voice. Do not leave a seat empty. At no point should sunlight touch the stage curtains. All glowing. All alive. I staggered forward, binder open, shouting over the roar. You don't write the rules. You're bound by them. The curtains behind her shuddered, thread smoking as light licked closer. Earl bellowed, keep her from the stage. The preacher chanted, voice breaking but steady. The scarred woman dragged her crowbar across the floor, sparks flying. The teenagers screamed together, not words, just raw defiance. And the rules glowed hotter. The fracture across her face split wide, light pouring out in rivers. She staggered. Just for a heartbeat. I slammed the binder shut. The whole auditorium convulsed. Light ripped from her body, dragged screaming into the rafters, where it tangled in the curtain ropes. The fabric flared but held, smoking, trembling. Hemera shrieked not with words, but with the sound of noon collapsing. Her body split into ribbons, each one snapping back like a whip, vanishing into cracks between boards, into the walls, into the very stage. Until nothing was left but a fading hum. The silence after was worse than the roar. The Ryman stood intact. Scorched, but standing. The binder lay at my feet, blackened, smoking. Its cover split but the rules inside still glowed faintly, waiting. Earl sank to a pew, face in his hands. The others were crying, laughing, silent in shock. Me? I couldn't stop staring at the stage. Because even though she was gone, banished, bound, whatever word fit, I knew one thing for certain. The Ryman would never let me quit this job. Not while the rules still needed someone to carry them.